Hospital.
Tonight we will begin, hopefully, with a short statement from Daniel Coomer, who is the chair of Community Board 6, in which he's going to highlight some of the rules under which the committee is going to operate tonight in terms of zoning and things like that. Then we are going to hear a brief presentation from Methodist Hospital, where they are going to highlight A, any changes they've made to their proposals since the last time we've heard from them, and B, what it is they need from the committee. In other words, what zoning changes they're going to ask for. During that portion of the meeting, there are no questions unless there is some material omission on their part. Once they finish their presentation, we will open the public hearing, and I will alternate between calling on people pro and con. You have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Because we are time limited, because we are in a New York City public school and we need to be out of here by 9 o'clock, we're going to stick strictly to that time limit. Depending on how many speakers there are, it is possible, not likely, but possible, that we will run out of time and that we will push the actual vote of the meeting that this committee has on December 5th. We will not continue the public hearing past tonight, but we may move the committee discussion and vote to that. So as soon as we're ready, we'll begin, but we're still trying to solve a technical problem, so I'll be back to you in just a minute. Again, if you wish to speak at the public hearing, you need to sign up on the pro and con sheets that are on the table outside the rear of the auditorium. Thank you. Oh, the other thing is, since we are time limited here, the more time you spend clapping, screaming, yelling, and otherwise taking up time, that is less time that people will have to speak and actually talk to us about what their feelings are about this project. So while mild applause is fine, screaming, yelling, cheering is discouraged. Please.
I want you to talk to the Daily News. Okay, sure.
You out of the seat if all the committee members come.
Understood.
Yeah. Oh, you do? Oh, great.
Are you on the committee? No. First 4 rows of committee members on them.
Right behind you is the seat.
Hey, John. They let me see here.
They let you
They let me see here.
Yeah, good. Should be let us see here.
They're going to
Hi.
Yeah.
Washburn. Just
Hi, how you
say
doing?
hi. Thanks for being on our team. On our side. I'm just a prisoner of grassroots.
Yeah, this is kind of amazing turnout.
Oh,
What?
good. I'm glad. I'm glad because
This is the biggest thing I've ever seen in my car.
that's incredible because we should be make way more in numbers. I mean, and as you know, we've had
Just
trouble.
one other
This is
thing
only
that
the
I wanted
start.
to tell you.
Like, we've barely educated.
We have two committees here
Very
tonight.
impressive.
We have two committees here tonight. We have transportation and we have landmark and land use. Assuming that we get to a vote tonight, only landmark and land use will be voting. However, we understand that there are transportation issues surrounding this project, and that's why we invited members of our transportation committee to hear them. However, they will deliberate on those issues separately at a separate meeting. So while you are welcome to talk about transportation-related issues, the only thing we're going to vote on tonight, assuming we get to a vote, is the land use portion of it.
Right. How are you? They'll come in the middle of the movie.
It might open up. Right now it's still not.
I saw Jen say hi to you. I'm Nancy Workman, just a resident in the area, but
Sure.
are you connected?
I represent the Preserve Park Slope.
Oh, very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Oh, very nice.
So,
that's very
and then
nice.
it's amazing what they've been able to put together in a very short period of time.
It is, and I think for a while it was
Well,
unclear.
it's interesting because
Okay, we're about to begin. If you can quiet down, please.
I can
Once again, I'm Peter Fleming. I'm the chair of the Land Use Committee of Community
Not
Board
got all the
6.
windows of Long Island College Hospital.
As I explained earlier, if you want to sign up to speak at the public hearing, there is pro and con sheets outside the auditorium.
Gives further reason.
We'll begin with a brief presentation from Daniel Coomer, who's the chair of Community Board 6. And we'll
I
hear
just
from the
assume the
hospital
more
that will
people
tell
that
us
talk, the better.
anything that's
I mean,
new
it's
since
not
we
like I have
last heard from
anything
them.
great to
And
say.
we'll also highlight for us what it is they need from us in order to build the facility that they want to build. That means what variances do they need us to approve on their behalf. Then we'll go on to the public hearing, alternating between pro and con, maximum of 3 minutes. Especially after we're further into the public hearing, if you simply agree with something that was said earlier, please just stand up and say, I agree with Mary, Tom, John, whoever, and we'll move on to the next speaker. So at this point, I'm going to introduce Daniel Coomer, again, the chair of Community Board 6, who has some introductory remarks.
Good evening and welcome to a joint meeting of the Landmarks and Land Use Committee and the Transportation and Public Safety Committees of Community Board 6. For those for whom this may be your first community board meeting, first of all, welcome. I'm also going to take just a couple minutes to explain some of our tribal customs here, which is the first one of which is that this is a meeting of two committees of the community board. It is not a meeting of the full community board, which is made up of 50 members appointed by the borough president. What happens here tonight, while extremely important, is not binding on the full board. What will emerge from this process eventually is a motion which essentially constitutes a recommendation to the full community board as to how they should vote on the proposed variance application, which in turn is merely a recommendation as well. It's not binding on the Bureau of Standards and Appeals, who are ultimately going to decide this. It is merely advisory, but obviously an important aspect of their process. The main purpose of tonight's meeting is to hold a public hearing on New York Methodist's application for a set of zoning variances in order to build a new ambulatory care facility on the block between 5th Street and 6th Street and 7th Avenue and 8th Avenues. We have a hard stop tonight at 9 o'clock. If there is time after we finish that public hearing for the committee to begin its deliberations, it will. If not, have to hold that portion of the process at another meeting that will have to occur before our December 11th general board meeting, which is when the board needs to actually vote on the application. Since the issues raised by this application are very complicated, and since one of my main goals, or our main goal here tonight, is not just simply to get through the hearing and deal with the substantive issues, but also to make sure that people understand what is going on and understand what happened when they leave. I'm going to take a few minutes to sort of set the table with some background information that's important, I think, both for the committee to be up to speed on and for the community to understand as well. But I'm going to do that once we have our laptop set up here with the projection, and I see it coming into the room as we speak. So while that's getting set up, I want to take a moment to make sure that people understand both what this meeting is and what it is not. Let's take those in reverse order. This is not a meeting about whether New York Methodist should be allowed to build a big building on that lot. It's just not. It's a meeting about whether they should be allowed to build a big building with the shape and bulk distribution that they want to build and that they say they need to build. It happens, I mean, they have the right under the law to build a big building. It happens that the way they want to distribute the bulk of that building around the property that they own does not comply with the applicable zoning rules. So in order to build that shape of the building, they have to ask the city's Bureau of Standards and Appeals for a variance or for an exception to those rules. And there's a specific set of standards that the BSA will use to decide whether they're entitled to that exception. And those are the same rules that we're going to use as part of our process. So, it's not working? All right, well, we may just have to dispense with it, unfortunately. I had some nice, pretty slides to show you, but I think I can do this to some degree verbally. Part of the background that's important for people to understand is what the zoning rules are that are in effect and applicable here, which is prior to 2003, as many people are aware, but many in this room probably not, there was a uniform set of zoning rules in Park Slope, and it was in the residential areas. It was under the R6, what's called the R6 scheme of rules, which doesn't have a hard building height, a set building height. The maximum height is actually the product of various factors that come into play. So ultimately, you get up to a point where there's no higher than a building can go. But the R6 zoning doesn't have a maximum building height, and it has various other bulk rules. In 2003, the Department of City Planning did a neighborhood-wide rezoning of this area that reduced the zoning in all of the residential areas into two new zoning districts. And I'm simplifying this to some degree, but most of the neighborhood was downzoned to what's called an R6B zoning district, which has which is the most restrictive in terms of heights. And a portion of the neighborhood, mainly east of 8th Avenue, but for a sliver on the west side of 8th Avenue, and north of a certain block around here, that's relevant here, was rezoned down to R7B, which is a restrictive height set of height rules and bulk rules, but less restrictive than the R6B. New York Methodist campus was largely carved out of that rezoning, and they retained the original R6 set of zoning rules, except for a portion of the property that they own that fronts on 5th Street and is at the corner of 8th Avenue, and then there's another parcel down the hill on 5th Street that was also rezoned. So the effect of that is that because of the way this proposed building is configured, there are 3 separate sets of zoning rules that are applicable here. And I had a nice chart that showed how this worked, but unfortunately not going to be able to show it to you. But so there's a portion of the building, and it's most of the building, frankly, is in the R6 zoning district, which is the original set of zoning rules, which are much less restrictive. The two, as I think most people are aware, the shape of this building is a U-shaped building, and as they'll sort of show you, the upper arms of the U, which stretch up toward 5th Street, one portion is in an R7B district, and one portion is in an R6B district, portion down the hill on 5th Street. So this committee is going to unfortunately have the job of applying different sets of zoning rules or different bulk rules. I can go through those quickly, but I think I'm going to let the hospital explain, and if need be, we'll provide some clarification as we go. Beyond that, I also just want to talk a little bit about, I had a slide on this as well, just to talk about the role of the community board here. Sir, we came, and I'm asking everyone here to be respectful and to be civil and to speak when when it's your turn. And if there's going to be any heckling in this room, I'm going to reserve the right to ask people to leave, because everyone here tonight who's speaking has a job to do, whether it's people from Methodist, people on the committee, people who come to speak their views on this, and we're going to get through that and give everyone an opportunity to speak. I'm just concluding. Okay, I want to make sure that people understand what our role is here, and that is when someone wants to build a building, basically they sit with their architects and they make a plan to build a building. They take it to the Department of Buildings. The Department of Buildings says either, yeah, go ahead, or not so fast. Aspects of this building do not comply with the zoning rules. If they want to continue to build that building, they have to make an application for a variance. As part of that application, they have to give the community board notice. And then we have the option, but we're not required to hold a public hearing, but we have the option to hold a public hearing. And after that public hearing, we have the option, if we wish, to make a recommendation to the BSA. There are many aspects of this process that are not going to be a no-brainer. Those two were no-brainers. We're holding a public hearing, and we're going to make a recommendation of some sort. But that's the role of the community board here. So you can help our committee fulfill that role best if you address your remarks. You're going to have, as Peter explained, you're going to have anyone who signed up is going to have 3 minutes to speak. If you address your remarks to the issues that are before the committee, which is whether to grant the variances that have been asked for. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to our able land use chair to begin the hearing.
Okay, at this point, we're going to invite our friends from Methodist Hospital to come up and tell us about their proposal and what it is they need from us.
Mr. Chairman, members of the CB6 Landmarks Land Use Committee, members of the Traffic Committee, and members of the community. Good evening. Thank you to the committee for inviting us to speak tonight, and thank you to all who have come to participate in this public hearing about our proposal for an outpatient center. I'm Lynn Hill, Vice President for Communication and External Affairs at New York Methodist Hospital, and I'm joined tonight by members of our project team, including Paul Travis of Washington Square Partners, Peter Cavaluzzi of Perkins Eastman, Elise Wagner of Kramer Levin, and many others. To provide a background for anyone who has not attended previous meetings, I want very briefly to remind you of the reason why New York Methodist, a major teaching hospital serving all of Brooklyn, needs this building. 3 major trends have led to the movement from inpatient to outpatient care. First, there have been the major developments in technology that now allow procedures and surgeries that require long hospital stays to be performed on an outpatient basis. Second, physician practice has evolved from a long tradition of independent solo practices to the current movement toward large group practices with physicians employed by or closely affiliated with their hospitals and expecting to work on hospital campuses so that they can move easily from inpatient to outpatient care. And finally, the changing healthcare delivery system demands that diagnosis, treatment, and patient care be moved to outpatient settings whenever possible. Hospitals throughout the country and throughout New York City are building centers like the one we propose. We need this building, which would be incorporated into the New York Methodist campus and would be staffed by hospital doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals to provide care more efficiently, to remain a hospital that is financially healthy, and most important of all, to provide comfortable, state-of-the-art, modern health care for our patients. As the building is discussed this evening, we hope that you will not forget its purpose and the need for the services that it will provide. Our presentation this evening will be quite different from our previous ones, as it focuses almost entirely on the zoning variances being sought. Previously, we have presented and accepted community input regarding the exterior facade design of the building, the traffic patterns it's likely to generate, green space and green construction, plans for the construction period, and the way in which the building mass is distributed. We continue to engage in community dialogue regarding many of these issues, in particular the facade design, which you may notice has already been refined since the September meetings, plans for the construction period, and the traffic patterns, which are being discussed in a traffic task force established by Councilmember Brad Lander that has already begun meeting. We also have some additional changes that have been suggested by community members. The first of these responds not to a zoning issue, but to a very common concern expressed by many near neighbors, the pedestrian entrance at the corner of 6th Street and 8th Avenue. The concern is that even a pedestrian entrance at this location will add to vehicular congestion. Yet the hospital needs an entrance in addition to the main vehicular and pedestrian entrance on 6th Street, and there doesn't seem to be a better place to put it. So, this is the entrance we're talking about. We suggest the following. The entrance at the corner will be closed during the day to patients and visitors and available only to employees who will be able to open it electronically with their ID cards. This means that employees arriving at the hospital by subway and exiting from the 8th Avenue end of the station will have easy access to their workplace. However, there will be no reason for patients and visitors who may be driving to the center to be dropped off at this corner, since the entrance will be unusable for them. The only time the entrance would be open for patients would be in the evening, when it could be used by the small number of patients coming to the urgent care center. In addition, the entrance would be available as an emergency exit at all times. We believe that this use of the entrance will serve the most important hospital purposes, but will not negatively impact traffic at the corner of 6th Street and 8th Avenue. The other two revisions that we'll mention tonight do relate to zoning issues, and they will be described during the discussion of these variances. The design of the building and our request to the board for the Board of Standards and Appeals variances are driven by the hospital's programmatic needs. We propose to consolidate outpatient programs and services into a single structure that can accommodate future growth in or changes to outpatient health care. The building's uniform large floor plates accommodate new technology and meet current codes and standards while also providing flexibility for the future. The large floor plates facilitate efficient coordination and collaboration among caregivers, an efficient internal circulation network with controlled pathways for patients and sterile materials, and minimal duplication of shared spaces and support functions. New York Methodist Hospital already owns all of the property on which the outpatient center will be located. Neither the as of right, also called the complying building, nor the proposed building uses the maximum amount of zoning square footage that would be allowable. We have worked to use only what we truly think we need now and in the years to come, which is about 300,000 zoning square footage. The total square footage of 500,000 square feet includes underground space, parking, mechanical space, elevators and shafts, and so on. But the programmatic space is less than that. We could, as of right, build 2 building towers of the same height and with the same zoning square footage as the building we propose, and we will do so if the variance is not granted. The difference is that the proposed building is much more efficient and will provide a more modern building that will lead to a better patient experience and a better experience also for physicians. We believe it will be a better building for the community as well, one that is more attractive, that keeps entrances off residential streets, and that will have a much shorter construction period, therefore causing less disruption to the community. Elise Wagner, our land use attorney from the firm of Kramer Levin, has been at all of our previous presentations, but this evening she gets to take the stage, and she will provide a detailed explanation of the variances that we're requesting.
Good evening. My name is Elise Wagner. I'm from the law firm of Kramer Levin, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Adam Taubman. The requirements for a variance application include the design of an as-of-right or complying development to be compared with the proposed project. In this, and as Adam is showing you, the complying development or the as-of-right development is on the left-hand side, and the proposed development is on the right-hand side, and they're both shown in sort of a yellowish color. The brown color, by the way, are the existing hospital buildings. In this case, the complying and proposed developments have the same floor area and the same height, but different building configuration or massing. The proposed center is a single building with large uniform floor plates that satisfy the hospital's programmatic needs. The complying development, on the other hand, consists of 2 separate building segments, one of which would be located over the existing garage. The 2 building segments have narrower and less uniform floor plates than those of the proposed center. The proposed center contains an internal protected vehicular driveway accessible only from 6th Street, which provides direct access to the building's main entrance. The complying development does not contain such a driveway, and therefore the separate building segment over the existing garage requires an additional vehicular entrance on 5th Street. These differences between the complying and proposed development limit the ability of the complying development to satisfy the hospital's programmatic needs. However, the hospital would build the complying development if it did not get the variance, since this is the only site available to upgrade and expand the hospital facilities. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you now about the zoning waivers. I want to make sure everyone understands, as Dan Kummer was saying, the complication of this site. The zoning lot for this building consists of the entire block except for a row of walk-up buildings on 5th Street that are not part of the site. The zoning lot includes the existing hospital buildings on the western portion of the block. The zoning lot is located in more than one zoning district, as Dan said. Most of it is located in an R6 zoning district, but the northeast corner is located in an R7B district, and the mid-block portion on 5th Street is located in an R6B district. So the hospital is requesting 5 types of waivers. The first one is demonstrated by this slide, which talks about distribution of floor area. So what the hospital is requesting, there is more floor area in the R6 than is needed in that area, and we're asking to distribute it to the R6B and R7B areas to allow the large floor plates that we've been talking about. The second waiver is lot coverage. The permitted lot coverage on this zoning lot varies from 65% to 80%. The proposed building would have over 90% lot coverage to allow those large floors, except that the portion of the building to the south of the parcels that are owned by others would have a lot coverage of 66.8%, which is close to what is permitted. The third zoning waiver that we are requesting is rear yard, and in this case it's called rear yard equivalent, and that has to do with the fact that the site goes through from street to street, so the zoning resolution calls it a rear yard equivalent. A 60-foot rear yard equivalent is required in the middle of the block. That is not provided for the same reason to provide these large floors. However, we note that the portion of the building to the immediate south of the 5th Street buildings owned by others does provide the required rear yard. And in fact, the 10 feet of the rear yard closest to the property line will contain no buildings at all, so as to provide these neighboring buildings with additional light and air. The next set of waivers that we are requesting has to do with what's called height and setback in the zoning resolution. In the R6 portion of the zoning lot along 8th Avenue, the building is just 1 foot higher than the maximum 60-foot front wall height and complies with the sky exposure plane. So there's just a very minimal waiver being requested here. Now, if you look at the left-hand side of this slide, we're talking first about the R6 portion along 6th Street, where the building exceeds the 60-foot maximum front wall and encroaches on the sky exposure plane. And also, the building does not provide the required rear yard setback, which is required at a height of 125 feet. Then, in the R6B portion of the lot along 5th Street, the building exceeds both the maximum front wall height of 40 feet and the maximum building height of 50 feet. And in addition, in the R6B portion, the building does not provide a rear yard setback at a height of 40 feet. So the blue represents the areas of non-compliance for which we're requesting variances. Now, if you look on the right-hand side, in the R7B portion of the lot at the corner of 8th Avenue and 5th Street, the building is just 1 foot higher than the maximum front wall height of 60 feet and exceeds the maximum building height of 75 feet. And that's the blue portion there on the right. As Lynn discussed earlier, the hospital is studying changes to the building design to address community concerns relating to the building's height. One change that is being studied would affect the corner of 8th Avenue and 5th Street in the R7B district. This portion of the building, under the study that the hospital is doing, would be reduced in height by removing the 6th floor in this portion of the zoning lot. The height would be reduced to 75 feet or close to 75 feet, which is the maximum permitted height in the R7B district. Another change that is being studied would affect the 5th Street portion of the building. An architectural element would be introduced in the mid-block portion of the building to express the same height as the 5th Street and 8th Avenue portion of the building, to enhance the visual continuity between the two portions of the building on 5th Street. And the last waiver that's being requested has to do with signage. The residential district regulations allow only one 12 square foot identification sign and one bulletin board for this entire building. The hospital has proposed 4 signs. One 125 square foot sign at the 6th Street entrance, 2 25 square foot signs at the 8th Avenue corner entrance, and a 16 square foot bulletin board. Now I'm briefly going to talk about the findings for a variance, which, as Dan said, is the basis for what the community board, committee, and then the full board will be on the basis on which they will be making their decision. For nonprofit teaching hospitals, the grant of a variance is based primarily on a showing of programmatic need. There are 5 findings that are required by the zoning resolution, 4 of which apply here. The first finding is that there are unique physical conditions on the zoning lot that create practical difficulties and unnecessary hardship in complying with the zoning resolution. In the case of a nonprofit teaching hospital, this finding is satisfied by a showing of programmatic need. In this case, there are also unique physical conditions that constrain development. The U-shape and narrow dimensions of the development site, the existing garage, the substantial slope of this block from 7th Avenue to 8th Avenue. That's the first finding. The second finding is that a complying development on the property would not provide a reasonable return. That finding is not applicable here because the hospital is a nonprofit institution. The third finding is that the variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood and would not impair the appropriate use and development of adjacent properties. That finding can be made here. The new building would be located on the New York Methodist campus adjacent to existing hospital buildings. The building's massing and architectural features have been designed to be compatible with surrounding buildings, incorporating feedback from the community over the last 6 months. As Lynn mentioned, building bulk was shifted from 8th Avenue to the middle of the block with additional setbacks on 8th Avenue. The on-site vehicular driveway minimizes vehicular traffic on adjacent streets and was modified to eliminate the vehicular entrance on 5th Street in response to community comments. Loading will be conducted on an interior portion of the site away from residences. And there have been many meetings discussing the facade treatment, which references the architectural vocabulary of Park Slope. In addition, in terms of the analysis that was done of this project and how it relates to the community, the environmental assessment statement prepared for this project found no significant adverse environmental impacts. The EAS compared the proposed building to the complying development. In some cases, the impacts of the complying development are worse than the proposed building. The complying development has small, inefficient floor plates, which requires the duplication of support spaces and therefore more staff than is needed for the proposed center. This results in more worker trips to the building from the complying development. The complying development does not contain an internal protected vehicular driveway, and the building over the existing garage requires an additional visitor entrance on 5th Street. This configuration results in more curbside drop-offs and pickups around the site and increased vehicular conflicts, but less concentration of vehicular traffic on 6th Street. The proposed building has no incremental shadow impacts as compared to the complying development. And the construction of the complying development over the existing garage would lengthen the construction period for the building, would require more truck deliveries and curb lane closures on 5th Street, and would require the garage to be closed for approximately 17 months. So that was the third finding. The fourth finding is that the practical difficulties and unnecessary hardships are not self-created. In this case, the practical difficulties and necessary hardship that necessitate the variance result from the physical conditions on the development site and the hospital's programmatic needs. And the final finding is that the variance is the minimum variance necessary to afford relief.
I guess that's a no vote.
Everybody okay? So the final finding, that the variance is the minimum variance necessary to afford relief. New York Methodist Hospital and Perkins Eastman, its architect, have consulted with the community over the past 6 months to design a building that satisfies the hospital's programmatic needs while maintaining an appropriate relationship with the surrounding area. This has required the hospital and architects to identify those zoning waivers that are truly essential for the project. This building does not exceed the maximum permitted floor area, and it exceeds the permitted zoning envelope primarily in areas that are internal to the New York Methodist campus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you, for your attention. On behalf of New York Methodist Hospital, I hope that the committee will see fit to recommend the variances needed to make our outpatient care center the best possible facility it can be, as well as one that will cause significantly less disruption to the neighborhood than the As of Right building. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to leave the microphone up front so that if you wish to come up and use it, you can. I will call people from over there, pro and con. I will give you a 30-second warning when your 3 minutes are almost up, and then I will tell you when your time is done. Thank you.
All right, we're going to start with pro. The first speaker for pro is Ann Bender.
There are many people here who are qualified to speak about this. There are many people here who are qualified to speak about the technical issues. I will speak about a human issue. I have lived in this neighborhood since 1975. My husband, who's indisposed, has lived here much longer. We owe our lives to the doctors, the tests, the emergency room, and in-hospital care at Methodist Hospital. We support a strong and growing Methodist Hospital. In my tradition, it is said, he who saves a life, it is as if he has saved the whole world. Well, I think that the most important thing that we have in this neighborhood is our hospital. And I have compassion for those in other parts of Brooklyn where we have friends whose hospitals have been closed or who are endangered, who may also need Methodist Hospital. It's not about me. It's not about us. It's about everyone who deserves good medical care.
Thank you. First speaker on the con side is Jane Wheeler.
Thank you for this opportunity. I am president of the 565 block. Really? Okay. I'm president of the 565 Block Association, that is 6th Street between 5th and 6th Avenues. I'm speaking on our behalf as a block, and I would like to take this as an opportunity that I understand that we are talking only about a variance, but if the hospital is truly interested in getting the variance, perhaps is the moment to also asked for mitigation and addressing what the impact of their right to build a big building actually is. I would like to read into the record a letter that we wrote in October as a block dealing with the environmental analysis. For the record, we are writing on behalf of the residents living on 6th Street between 5th and 6th Avenues. We are aware that an environmental analysis is being prepared as part of the required variance for the proposed outpatient facility. We request that it include a study of the sewer capacity on 6th Street and the impact that the new facility will have on those lines. For some time, residents on our block have reported flooding on our street, basements, and backyards, including backups of raw sewage during and after heavy rains, damaged residential foundations, creating problems of mold and vermin. These problems became acute in the spring of 2013 and did not abate until the rains did, but before which 16 homes experienced flooding. At that time, this matter was brought to the attention of Brad Lander, our city councilman, and the Department of Environmental Protection in a letter signed by 32 households on the block. A copy of the letter is attached. This letter was sent to the CBS Landmarks and Use Committee on October 22nd. We are concerned that any increased occupancy authorized by an approval of the proposed hospital facility will exacerbate an already difficult problem, and unless conditioned appropriately, will result in unmitigated impact.
30 seconds. We
would thus appreciate your attention to this issue in the environmental analysis. And again, if you're going to give a variance, get the mitigation that you need in order to address its impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker on the pro list, Reverend Dr. Daniel Meter.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for this opportunity to address the hearing. My name is Daniel Meter. I'm the pastor of the Old First Reformed Church at 729 Carroll Street. I'm speaking in favor of the hospital's application. Old First is the mother church of Brooklyn, founded in 1654. We're the first and oldest nonprofit charitable institution in the village and town of Brooklyn. We have a particular interest in the wholeness of life for all the citizens and denizens of this borough, not to mention our own parishioners. Park Slope is not an ordinary neighborhood. It's a capital neighborhood. Our neighborhood has a national and even international reputation. Our interest tonight is not just for ourselves, but for the future of health care for all Americans. Tonight we are addressing a test case of the wholeness of life in a time of crisis for health care and danger for hospitals. I was born in a hospital in downtown Paterson, New Jersey, which is no longer there. I had my childhood tonsillectomy at the Brooklyn Lutheran Hospital on East New York Avenue and Junior Street, which is no longer there. I was treated for asthma in what is now the Interfaith Medical Center on Atlantic Avenue, and that hospital is on the ropes. Litch is on the ropes. Victory Hospital in Fort Hamilton is no longer there as a hospital. My daughter lives 3 blocks from the Caledonian Hospital, which is apartments now. Hospitals close when they are not visionary and creative, when they do not invest, and when they do not expand. It's a national issue, and I applaud and support the Methodist Hospital for being out in front. The healthcare system in this country is in flux, to say the least. Inpatient care is merging with outpatient care in the seamless weaving of health maintenance. The elderly need this seamlessness increasingly, and so do the children. My congregation consists of old Brooklyn families going back to the Dutch and new Brooklyn families arriving from Nebraska and the Philippines. They all need the seamlessness, the wholeness of life. This building project deals with and anticipates this increasing interconnectedness of healthcare. I deal with the spiritual myself, but I can't deal with the physical. I can depend on Methodists because they recognize our spiritual needs, even while they are out in front of technology and outpatient services, which this proposal facilitates and integrates.
I'm compelled by the case being made by the hospital. I believe that the costs to the neighborhood are costs that should be paid for spiritual and moral reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker on the con list is Stuart Klein.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Stuart Klein, I'm an attorney. I didn't bring a pointer with me today, I apologize. I've been an attorney in land use for approximately 35 years. During that period of time, I served at the Building Department, the City Planning Commission, the Board of Standards and Appeals, the Mayor's Office, and various and sundry other agencies. During that period of time, I've reviewed hundreds of applications for variances, both at the Board of Standards and Appeals and the City Planning Commission. I was asked to take a look at this particular application by Preserve Park Slope, a group of like-minded individuals very, very concerned over the impact or the negative impact this is going to have on the neighborhood. I particularly went out of my way to compare it with 4 recent submissions, 3 by this particular applicant's law firm in Manhattan, Presbyterian, Cornell, NYU, and finally by a different organization, Sloan. Each of them attempted to prove and successfully prove the programmatic needs argument. However, each of them had quantifiable, qualifiable facts in support of those programmatic needs. None exist in this application. Each of them argued that the land was unique. They brought engineering reports in, they brought professional reports in, they quantified the amount of money they would have to spend in order to make up for the problem with the land. No such reports exist here. In fact, in the 35 years I've been reviewing this, I can honestly say that this is probably one of the most efficient applications I've ever seen. For example, the Sloan building it's on 1133 York, I believe. That has 12 operating rooms, larger operating rooms than the ones proposed here, by 100 square feet each, spread across 3 floors with much smaller floor plates. They put in multiple studies, they put in professional reports, they put in doctor's reports, they put in engineering reports, all in support of their programmatic needs, which is the primary concern that this board has to look at. None of that is in this particular report. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages saying this is what we want. It doesn't explain why it is they need it. Also, one final thought in listening to Ms. Wagner tonight, she said they had, I'm trying to reconcile 2 separate statements she made. One, we're still designing the building, and 2, we've designed the building to, out of the comments made by the local community. If in fact that's the case, I don't know why we're here tonight. What is it that they're asking the committee to vote on? If they're still designing the building, what is it that they're saying?
On the pro list, Reverend Dr. Ernest Jones.
Next guest will be 2 at a time, so the next person speak up.
The next speaker on the con list, Marvin Sephora. There you go.
Mr. Chairman, I am Ernest Jones. I'm the pastor of the Greenwood Baptist Church. It's located at 461 6th Street at 6th Avenue, at 7th Avenue, 7th Avenue. I'm Ernest Jones, pastor of the Greenwood Baptist Church, located at 461 6th Street at 7th Avenue. I stand to concur with my colleague, Reverend Meter, and as we have heard on this evening, New York Methodist Hospital has the right to build on their property. It is my concern as being a local resident that such building aesthetically conforms to community character while also being concerned with the needs of the hospital, that they meet their functional needs that have been projected into the future to ensure what is best for this neighborhood and for the larger community. Without a doubt, this project does represent a large change for our community, a larger footprint in square footage, but one designed to better serve the growing needs of our borough. A larger campus to facilitate consolidation of outpatient medical services, making, for one thing, less stressful emergency room experiences, something most everyone can appreciate, while improving delivery of inpatient care, something everyone wants and expects when hospitalized. I want to say something as a pastor in the area. I know firsthand the impact that major illness and unexpected tragedies have on people's lives. Having to provide emotional comfort and constructive support to women, men, and children confronted with major sicknesses or unexpected deaths, or when parents have to deal with unexpected tragedies with their children. It takes intensive training.
30 seconds.
Training of which most in the general population are not aware. This hospital, through its exceptional pastoral care chaplaincy program, provides young men and women of faith with such exposure and skills. This is a teaching hospital in more ways than one. Expanding services also expands training, which has far-ranging value and benefits to patients and their families and the larger community.
Thank you. The next speaker would be Marvin, and then the next speaker after that would be Dr. Michael Ayad.
My name is Marvin Saporin, and I've been a resident of Park Slope for 41 years. We didn't move here for the hospital. I'm here, though, tonight to ask the members of the Planning Committee and of the Land Use Committee to do something very hard. For months, we've been reading reports prepared by prestigious firms that specialize in helping large developers get around zoning and other regulations designed to create a more livable city. You've seen and heard expensively produced presentations that are meant to portray New York Methodist's massive expansion plans as the only way to provide more and better health care. That's what the reverends have been hoping for. But I and the hundreds of people who signed these petitions and that are here today are here to ask you to listen to our voices now and not just the fancy papers you've received. And if you consider it, you won't give Methodists the variances they're requesting. The incomplete and inadequate application that New York Methodist has submitted is not a plan for enhanced and improved health care services. It's a maximalist wish list by New York Methodists that, if accepted, would thwart Mayor-elect de Blasio and Governor Cuomo's desires to create a comprehensive health care plan for all of Brooklyn that would include the community board. And they're not alone. Gregory Burke from the United Hospital Fund, hardly an enemy of hospitals, in a September 2012 article on changes in the New York State healthcare system argued that, quote, competition for volume and market share and for specialty services that continue to be well reimbursed under the fee-for-service system may continue to drive, quote, unnecessary development. This is an excellent description of what New York Methodist plan is all about. To remedy the problem of unnecessary development, the United Hospital Fund article concluded there is a strong case to be made for local and regional planning to reflect and adopt priorities to address local and regional needs. And that's what this debate is really about. We want Methodist to scale back its plans and work with the new mayor to create a comprehensive plan for health care of all of Brooklyn, not just one that will benefit an institution that is part of one of the largest conglomerates in New York. And this disagreement is not just about the future of Park Slope. It is about the future of health care throughout Community Board 6 in Brooklyn. If New York Methodist gets its way, it will be impossible to create an economically viable health center located in communities now served by Litch, and hundreds of millions of dollars will be sucked up just for this project. Moreover, there's no need to concentrate all of the outpatient services in one small area that can't support what we have now. Many other hospitals have ambulatory care facilities away from their main facilities, and they attract world-class doctors. So we ask the members of the Land Use Committee and the Community Board to just say no to Methodist Hospital. Don't be intimidated by their threats and vague promises, and don't destroy a wonderful community just for the sake of Methodist's already huge bottom line. Thank you.
So that you understand, the more that you do that, the less time there is going to be for people to speak. So you make your own decision.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman, for this opportunity to speak. I'm Dr. Michael Iatt. I'm a neurosurgeon at New York Methodist who's lived in Park Slope for the past 2.5 years, and I'm proud to be a member of this community. I get cheese at Russo's, meat at Fleischer's. I get my hair cut at Nick's Barber. I love this neighborhood. And, Methodist is an integral part of this community. And healthcare is part of our lives. And just like Nearguard Pharmacy is part of Park Slope, so is Methodist. We live in one of the nicest neighborhoods in Brooklyn. If your aunt needs a hip replacement, or your grandmother needs dialysis, or your family member needs outpatient vascular, neurological services, you shouldn't have to go to Manhattan for that. And in my opinion, Methodist is one of the best hospitals in Brooklyn, hands down. And there are obviously important areas that we need to grow, and those have been outlined. And in doing so, this will directly benefit the Park Slope community. And we need your support in order to do this, to make Park Slope a better place because of this. Thank you.
The next two speakers first are Eve Gartner, and the next one will be Megan Shade.
Thank you very much. I'm a longtime resident of Park Slope and an attorney with experience in land use and environmental law. Excuse me. Okay, sorry. I'm a longtime resident of Park Slope and an attorney with experience in land use law and environmental law. Methodist claims that this board should simply presume programmatic need for its non-conforming development under a doctrine called the Cornell Doctrine. But that Cornell case says that the controlling consideration for the board must be the overall impact on the public's welfare. And it specifically must consider whether the development would have significant impact on traffic congestion, so much so that it would override any benefit. So traffic is not a separate consideration here, even if the Transportation Committee is separate from the Land Use Committee. Methodist relies on its environmental assessment statement. An environmental assessment statement is supposed to be a disclosure document, but in this case, it's really an obscuring document. As just one example of that, the Methodist Hospital currently emits over 25 tons per year of hazardous air pollutants. This comes out of its boiler operations. Now, Methodist admits that if it has to build a new development, a new building, it will emit even more hazardous air pollutants to fuel the newer building. But it says nothing in the EAS about how much more hazardous air pollutants it will be emitting. It gives no information about that whatsoever. In addition, the EAS says nothing about the cumulative impacts on air quality in the neighborhood from the increased traffic, the increased boiler emissions, and the diesel construction vehicles that will operate for years at its construction site directly between two schools. Somewhat shockingly, Methodist claims that its proposal will have actually no impact on traffic and no impact on air quality. Its theory is that if it doesn't get the variances, it will build something else that will be just as bad for our air and just as bad for the traffic. But this reasoning is completely flawed.
30 seconds.
The board must use current conditions for the baseline for its assessment. It cannot rely on the assessment given in the EAS. I want to just close by saying that this is truly one of the great neighborhoods in the country and probably in the world. And to allow Methodist Hospital to do so much damage to the beauty of our streets and to the health of our children requires a much greater showing of need and much more disclosure of impacts than we have yet seen from Methodist. The variance
Megan, the next speaker is David Abraham.
Hey, my name is Megan Shade, and I'm reading on behalf of two residents who could not be here this evening. They're just brief statements.
Hospital residents?
The residents of the, no, excuse me, not hospital residents, let me say. One is Virginia Papper. She's a resident of 7th Avenue here in Park Slope. Why is it important to pass the building plan? I believe that a growing neighborhood needs to have parallel services, and that means fitting into the health needs of an expanding Park Slope. I'm also convinced that the values that this hospital stood by will not be sacrificed with expansion. The second statement is provided by Ann and Eugene Feldman, the residents of Carroll Street. We have been residents of Park Slope for 40 years and are now in our 80s. We have always considered Methodist to be our community hospital and have frequently used its facilities both as inpatients and on many occasions for numerous outpatient procedures and services, such as visits to the emergency room, chest x-rays, MRI, pacemaker checkups, sleep clinic consultations, and countless blood tests. As we grow older, it has become increasingly difficult to travel, and the centralization of all outpatient services in one building and the real possibility that doctors who are affiliated with Methodist will be able to move their offices into the new building is most attractive. Over the years, we have seen Park Slope grow. As our population increases and as medical needs and techniques change, it seems only logical to us that there be additional need for the hospital services, which cannot be provided without the proposed plan. We can understand and appreciate the burden the proposed construction places on those who live near it. Construction and renovation on any block is an inconvenience many of us have faced. It is one of the burdens of city life. However, the emphasis on that discomfort seems to us short-sighted. In our view, these concerns do not outweigh the need that Methodist Hospital should be able to build the proposed building and to provide the medical services we all may require in years to come.
Thank you. The next speaker is actually a Gary Schaefer.
Good evening. My name is Gary Schaefer. I've lived in Park Slope, in fact, opposite the hospital for 32 years. I'm an attorney and a former assistant commissioner of the Department of Buildings. I want to second some of the comments that Stuart said about the lack of factual support in the application, and Eve Gardner referred to it too in terms of the environmental impact. You will look in vain for any kind of engineering report in the application to support the facts put forth by Methodist in their application. And as well, the comment about the fact that the plans are still being revised does beg the question as to why we're meeting tonight. But I wanted to highlight just two things that I think go to the issue of the factual accuracy and underpinnings of the proposal. As part of the application, Methodist has submitted complying plans and compared them to proposed plans. The complying plan shows, and I put it up there, I realize it's small, shows an alleged problem between two buildings on 5th and 6th Street, which are shown as being disconnected and is described as there being an impractical disconnect between functions of the two buildings. And then there being a building toward the east side of 6th Street that is supposed to be too narrow for proper use. However, there is really a solution to that. And there's a space here where, in fact, these two buildings supposedly are disconnected. And the way you resolve that is you connect the buildings. So this complying plan and the proposed plans are one of possible proposed plans and one of possible complying plans. The fact this disconnect area that is empty on the complying plan, on the proposed plan, is in fact filled in. It's the western part of the U. So in fact, the hospital plans on using that property, and they could use it as well as part of a different plan, which may or may not be complying. It's not going to be, if it were not complying, then they could apply for a variance for that. And the same goes for the narrow portion of the building on the eastern part of 6th Street, which if you look on the proposed plan is widened. So they could do the same, in fact continue then to use some of the space on 5th Street that might change the distribution and height and bulk of the other buildings, and therefore keep any final structure within the character of the neighborhood. Thank you.
The next two speakers are Will Dietz and Beth Morrow.
Hi everyone, I'm reading two statements from two of our physicians. My name is Will Dietz, I'm with Public Affairs at New York Methodist Hospital. First speech I'm going to read is from Dr. Anthony Sala. He lives at 564 5th Street between 8th Avenue and PPW. He writes, I've lived in Park Slope for almost 30 years and have two children who attend school here. I'm a pulmonary critical care physician affiliated with New York Methodist Hospital, a great one too, by the way, and am exceedingly active in the hospital. We have a world-class facility that I am enormously proud to work in. However, the institution is truly busting at the seams, and the new project will decompress our facility and ensure that our community continues to receive the first-rate care it so richly deserves. As a Park Slope resident, I have a heightened awareness of the potential drawbacks of such growth, but unequivocally believe that the benefits would far outweigh the potential downside. I am sure that our community will be safer and benefit immensely from this upgrade. And the second statement is from Dr. Jeremiah Gellis. He's a longtime resident of Garfield Place who's unable to attend. Whatever the downside, this community and Brooklyn need a growing and thriving New York Methodist Hospital. As with everything we do in medicine, there are benefits and risks, upsides and downsides, positives and negatives, and we make our choices based on the net benefit in any situation. This is true of most decisions we make in our lives, and our community will overwhelmingly benefit from the new facility we are currently planning. We will all be grateful that we have a world-class hospital to which to turn in times of need. Thank you very much.
Beth Morrow, and then the next speaker after that is Cesar Torres.
Hello, I'm Beth Morrow, and I live on 7th Street. Been a long-time resident, and I would like to say I am a healthcare advocate, and I support Methodist's effort to modernize and improve services. However, in that development, it's important to make an inquiry into whether the size and scale can be safely accommodated in this dense residential neighborhood. And in that inquiry, it's important to raise the fact that Methodist is not able or not interested in minimizing their current impact on the neighborhood, street traffic, and conflicts, even at their current scale. I didn't see any elements of the proposal tonight that addressed those issues. In written testimony, which we submitted, we provide a long list of failures to plan following their last expansion. And in a manner, these failures affect patients, residents, ambulances, and pedestrians. For instance, on 7th Street, where I live, ambulances routinely stack up at the ambulance dock, resulting in delays in getting care, and even the absurd scenario of EMTs taking patients out in the middle of the street while backed up traffic honks wildly as someone's in an emergency crisis situation. I see that often. I have many examples of the failures of the current recent expansion. The list goes on and on. The same concerns about increased scale that worry residents also threaten the hospital's ability to deliver services safely and conveniently and become that modernized facility that they say they want to be. And yet, in keeping with this history, despite the importance of traffic impact and the known traffic impact it already has, It has produced a very flawed and incomplete traffic study. There are many examples of the problems with the study, but a few examples. It does not address the unique issues created by having 6 schools in the immediate vicinity that house over 4,700 students that pass on the sidewalks close by either the same streets that the ambulances or the trucks or the new people coming to the hospital in their cars pass on. It's not realistic about the driving practices, that it doesn't account for the fact that people come and then circle around. So each car is magnified. It's not one car, it's 5 cars in impact. 45% of traffic is doing that in Park Slope, according to a transportation alternative study. It doesn't meet environmental review standards, city environmental quality review standards. So unless scaled back and well-designed, which will require significant oversight and an independent comprehensive traffic study, Methodist expansion threatens to create traffic conflicts, street flow problems that will change the essential character of the neighborhood. And therefore, the variance should be denied, and there should be pressure put on this alternative proposal as well. I don't think it's all or nothing. There's got to be some pushback.
Cesar Torres, and after that, David Abramson. Cesar Torres? Okay, no, then we'll just go with David Abramson.
Thank you. My name is David Abramson. I live at 441 6th Street for 20 years. I'm a licensed architect who's spent a 43-year career working primarily in and with historic buildings. Based on my review of the materials submitted by Methodist Hospital, including the BSA application and EAS, I request that the variances be denied for the reasons stated below. The hospital's arguments against building the complying design may be the result of a self-created hardship, and part of the complying design is not permissible due to pre-existing permits and approvals. The information submitted to support a need for structural and seismic upgrading is limited and ambiguous and is not supported by independent expert documentation. The development area of the proposed lobby of the western complying building would be constructed on one of the 2 means of entry for the existing parking garage. The C of O of the 7th Avenue Medical Pavilion states that the ground floor area behind the medical building can be used only for parking and a loading berth. Thus, no construction and certainly no lobby of a new building would be permissible in that location. Since the proposed complying design violates both the prior BSA-approved plans and the pavilion C of O, the hospital's submittal cannot be considered a complying design. The design of the proposed building does alter the essential character of the neighborhood and is inconsistent with the commitment made by Methodist Hospital in the Memorandum of Agreement dated September 15, 2009 between Methodist Hospital and the Park Slope Civic Council and CB6 to endeavor to make every effort to preserve and add to the sense of place as defined by the Landmarks Preservation Commission. The historic neighborhood in the project area in particular are characterized by virtually uninterrupted building facades set back from the property lines. This includes single-family row houses, apartment buildings, churches, and even the hospital's historic 8th Avenue building. The setbacks from the property lines yield a public sidewalk and a semi-private yard separated with low curbs and fences. The proposed building is built to the property lines on both 8th Avenue and 6th Street, which destroys one of the key neighborhood historic design characteristics. The typical building height along most of 8th Avenue is 50 feet or less, not 60 feet as stated in the BSA application. The homes directly opposite the proposed building are 48 feet to the top of their cornice. The proposed building on 8th Avenue is 64 feet 11 inches to the top of the parapet. It's 15 feet higher than almost all of the buildings in the neighborhood. The character of the neighborhood is defined by sky viewed over modestly scaled buildings. This feature is interrupted in only one location within the project area.
Please.
Thank you.
Next 2 speakers are Sandra Sergen and Valerie Zilberscher.
Hi, my name is Sandra Surdin. I'm speaking in favor of the variance. My husband and I have purchased our first home in Park Slope 43 years ago. Sorry, hope you can hear me now. Since then, I've seen the neighborhood grow and change dramatically. I may not have embraced all of those changes, but I feel lucky to have chosen such a wonderful place to call home. Methodist is my family hospital. Both my husband and I have been patients for surgeries as well as testing procedures. I feel privileged to live near such a vibrant, financially stable healthcare facility. Over the years, I've seen Methodist undergo extensive renovation, sometimes as other hospitals are closing. With the growth of same-day procedures, Methodist needs to expand in order to keep up with technology or become obsolete. Now that I'm getting older, I'm more apt to need a procedure or surgery, and I want my hospital to be state-of-the-art. Truthfully, I don't want to have to travel to Manhattan. I consider myself lucky to have a great facility in my backyard. During my 43 years in Park Slope, I've been affected by my neighbors' renovations numerous times. I understand about one's quality of life being interrupted. However, one could hardly walk down a block in our neighborhood where there's not a renovation taking place. I may not be happy about the noise and interruption. However, I do like the long-term benefits. I may complain that I can't walk down the street because there are too many baby carriages. But truthfully, 43 years ago, I couldn't have dreamed that Park Slope would become the best neighborhood in New York City, according to New York Magazine.
30 seconds.
Methodist Hospital serves all of Brooklyn, the place attracting young people and families in droves. To serve them well in the future, it must keep up with the latest technology. And to do so, it is imperative that this project move forward and the variance be approved. Thank you.
Valerie Zilberscher and Julie Lipton are the next two speakers.
Good evening. I've been a long-time resident of Park Slope, over 30 years. Belt it out? Is that better? Yeah. Okay. I want to make no mistake. I've lived in this neighborhood a long time. This project will inalterably destroy the essential character of this neighborhood. It's a simple mathematic equation. The bigger the building, the more people that will come, the more autos that will come. It's simple math. It will actually be adding a tremendous amount of volume to an infrastructure that is overwhelmed at present. So basically, they'll build an immense complex. They'll come, but no one is really thinking through what's going to happen afterwards. And that's what I'm asking CB6 to do, to make sure that we don't disassociate the traffic from the land use issue. It's extremely important to alter the essential character of this neighborhood by dropping in over 200,000 cars per year in an area, as Beth already pointed out, that has 4,700 school children and 4 schools surrounding the immediate area. Our kids are being exposed to ambulances screaming through crosswalks every day. I've seen it, I run every day. And I don't think that we should be endangering the children of our neighborhood to build a complex this large when they could be altering it and putting some of the services elsewhere. It does not need to be concentrated here. There's no question that Methodist is a valuable asset, but we do not have to concentrate all of these services in this neighborhood. I don't think that putting this here and turning this neighborhood into one giant, honking, polluting traffic jam that no task force can fix is the right solution.
Julie Lipton and then Bernie Kleinman.
Hi, my name is Julie Lipton. I am a mother of 2 young children. I live here in Park Slope, and I am a nursing student at NYU. I moved to Park Slope not like 40 years ago like many of you, but I moved here about 7 years ago. And like many of my friends who have young children and who moved from Manhattan, we used medical facilities that were in Manhattan, and we continued to make the trek in there or rely on their services. And slowly, over the last 6 years, I have moved my medical services and the practitioners that I see to Methodist. This includes my internists, my gynecological care, my son's cardiologist, and I am in the process of changing my cardiologist. And why am I doing this? Because I believe in Methodist. I believe that this is a first-class hospital, and I believe that the variance will allow it to continue to grow in a way that'll benefit not only Park Slope residents, but the greater Berkeley community. I feel very fortunate that I have a hospital in my backyard that is looking towards the future about how to provide long-term for the community as opposed to worrying about having to shut its doors. Thank you.
Bernie Kleinman, and the next speaker after that is Lisa Sanfilippo.
My name is Bernie Kleinman. I live on 7th Street. If seniority is going to weigh the issues here, then we've been here for 46 years. I want to begin by asking what is a kind of a procedural question of the community board. If the board is able, based upon this meeting, to only approve or disapprove the variances and say nothing more about the substance of what's going on here today, then I have to say that I think that we're going to have very limited impact, all of us today who are in opposition to this construction. Having said that, I want to say that I don't think that the hospital has been altogether honest about the intentions of this construction. They tell us that it is for outpatient services, and the reason it's true that outpatient services are best served at a lower cost when they're not in a hospital. But they have not told us anything about how this lower cost is going to actually be affected. It looks to me like a 7+ story building with surgical suites, a retail drugstore, cancer institute. It doesn't sound to me like after they spend $100 million or more to put up this monster, that they're going to be able to say the cost to the patients and to Medicare and Medicaid is going to be reduced. That seems very unbelievable to me. Secondly, I want to say that they have been giving good outpatient care as far as we know to the present, and we've been assured that the increase in demand for the outpatient care is only going to be a couple of percent per year, under 5% we were told, and perhaps much less. If that is the case, then I see no reason why the present site for the expansion is not going to be sufficient without the large building. As a matter of fact, if they want to help us keep Park Slope the way it is, they can maintain the facade of those 5 brownstones that are on 8th Avenue, and they could even, if they chose to, extend the brownstone facade all the way up to 6th Street by making use of the brownstones that they're planning to demolish right now on 6th Street. If they were to do that, they would have a brownstone facade running between 5th and 6th Street completely, and if they set back perhaps 40 or 50 feet behind that facade, they could put up another building as they wish, perhaps 4 stories tall, and that would seem to me to be more than adequate to cover 2 or 3% growth for many, many years to come. Thank you very much.
Lisa Sanfilippo.
Hello, my name is Lisa Sanfilippo, and I'm also a nursing student, and I live on 2nd Street and 6th Avenue. Can you hear me?
Closer to the mic.
Can you hear me now? I live on 2nd Street and 6th Avenue. I support the proposed variances needed to build the New York Methodist Outpatient Care Center. I think they do make it safer and more attractive and less intrusive than the alternative building. I do understand that it will not be attractive or convenient for everyone. However, once it is complete, it will be an invaluable resource to Park Slope and the surrounding neighborhoods. As the future of healthcare delivery moves away from the hospital and into the community setting, I support, and I think that we should all support, our hospital's effort to accommodate these changing needs and help it accomplish its mission of providing excellent healthcare services to people who live and work in Brooklyn. I personally would feel very proud and lucky to have this essential resource in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Because I need to stand up and stretch my neck. I'm going to read a letter from the American Institute of Architects, Brooklyn chapter. AIA Brooklyn is an organization of 195 active licensed architects. The Urban Design Committee of our organization needs time to evaluate the proposed BSA variance application for the above referenced premises. Initial review of the application raises questions concerning height and setbacks with regard to the character of the surrounding neighborhood. AIA Brooklyn requests a postponement of the Land Use Committee vote in order to properly review the BSA plans and application. The next two speakers are Kathy Nissenbaum and Lark Anton.
Dear Community Board 6, thank you for your time and hard work serving on this board. My name is Kathy Nissenbaum, and I've lived in Brooklyn for 22 years. I currently reside on 6th Street between 8th Avenue and Prospect Park West with my husband and our 2 school-age children. I am speaking as a member of Park Slope, a neighbor of Methodist Hospital, and a member of Preserve Park Slope. I would like to refer to the 5 findings that must be met in order for CB6 to recommend approval of Methodist request for variances. With respect to findings A and D, the board should use these findings not to recommend approval because there is nothing unique about the parking deck behind Rite Aid that precludes building on it. Methodist says it cannot build on the parking deck because it is cost prohibitive, but the expense of construction does not make the site unique. And anyway, if there is extra difficulty in building on that lot, it is of Methodist's own making because it did not build the parking deck to code. So this board cannot make findings required by A or D. With respect to finding C, here, again, the board should not recommend approval because a good portion of the building and some of its major elements will be bordering residential landmarked 8th Avenue. A large part of the proposed building borders on 8th Avenue across from landmark buildings. Across, in fact, from the only segment of landmark buildings for at least 2 blocks in either direction on 8th Avenue. Also, the proposed building can be seen from Prospect Park West, and it will rise substantially higher than any building in the surrounding area. The proposed entrance on the corner of 6th Street and 8th Avenue, even with the revision, will certainly alter the essential character of 8th Avenue. One needs only to picture the current employee/pedestrian entrance on the corner of 6th Street and commercial 7th Avenue to see what will become of the residential corner on 8th Avenue. Drop-off and pickup traffic, car services double parked, food trucks, newspaper boxes, and as many dog owners, 8th Avenue doesn't even allow trash cans. With respect to finding E, again, the board should not recommend approval because when looking at the plans submitted by Methodist, part or all of floors 5, 6, and 7 are for affiliated physicians' offices. This demonstrates that the variance applied for cannot be the minimum variance necessary to afford relief. In addition, I would like to reiterate what many have said tonight or will. These plans will have an adverse and negative effect on the neighborhood, and they will certainly alter the essential character of Park Slope. These buildings do not operate in a vacuum, nor do people arrive out of thin air to get to them. The renderings showing 1 or 2 cars here and there are truly inaccurate. knows that there are double and where possible triple parking. Our streets are not just going to get any wider, and both the hospital and Park Slope residents know that current traffic conditions are neither optimal nor safe.
Time, thank you. Laura Anton, and then the next speaker after that is Norman Mintz.
Hi, good evening. I'm a resident of 6th Avenue between 6th and 7th, and I'm here tonight not as a marketing and PR professional. I'm here as a mom of 3 who, to echo a previous mother who I heard speak, I have literally the same story. Growing up in Riverdale in the Bronx, all of my medical and hospital visits were to hospitals in Manhattan. And through my life, as my career has progressed and as my family has grown, and when we moved to Park Slope, I had 2 children at Mount Sinai. Literally took them to pediatricians in the city. And by the time we got pregnant with our 3rd, we finally decided that that was ridiculous because we have a hospital around the corner. And I can say without a doubt that my daughter, my 3rd that was born last year, is a blessing, and I received much better care at Methodist than I did at any other hospital. And last night, as I ran to the ER with my daughter, who had a terrible ear infection, it compelled me to come tonight and to address all of you, many of whom I'm sure are parents and who have probably used Methodist services. I think that the long-term benefits of this hospital are going to be beneficial to our community, knowing all of the hospitals that are closing. I have in-laws that were affected by in Breezy Point by Hurricane Sandy, and they lived with us for 6 months as they rebuilt, and all of their services were provided to them at Methodist Hospital, from my father-in-law having a heart attack to my mother-in-law needing a hip replacement. And I come tonight just to voice my opinion as a resident, as a mother, and as someone who plans to live in Park Slope for a very long time, and assume that my care will be all at Methodist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Norman Mintz, and then Paul Levy.
Good evening. My name is Norman Mintz. I'm a resident of Park Slope, longtime resident, I might add. I'm a professional urban designer, and I teach a course in historic preservation at Pratt Institute right here in Brooklyn. I wrote a letter on November 6th regarding the New York Methodist Hospital BSA application. Copies were sent to CB6, to Park Slope Civic Council, Lynn Hill, and Councilman Brad Lander. In my letter, I expressed concerns regarding a particular urban design issue. On November 13th, I received a reply to my letter from Ms. Hill. I feel it necessary to inform you of her response. My urban design concern stems from the fact that I am unsure of where the proposed new building meets the ground. This is an extremely important issue, as the manner in which this happens should be consistent with the manner of how this occurs with other buildings within the Park Slope neighborhood. In most cases, building facades, whether historic brownstones or limestone structures, are built to the building line and allow for a staircase and an open space. The open space occurs from the building line to a property line, usually 6 to 12 feet from the building line. This is a very typical Park Slope characteristic and should be respected at all costs. According to Lynn Hill's response, quote, the base of the building, and I presume she's talking about the new building, hits the property line on both 6th Street and 8th Avenue. We will effectively widen the sidewalk because encroachments will no longer be there. End of quote. Frankly, I don't quite follow her response, other than to say I do not see where the hospital's new building will comply with an essential Park Slope characteristic, which I've just outlined. I'm also not sure what she's meant by encroachments. Imagine a massive building looming just over your shoulder when one is walking down 6th Street or 8th Avenue. I might add that 8th Avenue, which we've just heard, is on the east side, is on the official Landmark Historic District list. The issue of building setback is of major concern, for if it is eliminated, so is an architectural feature that makes Park Slope the special neighborhood that it is. To say that we've heard tonight that the new building is compatible with other buildings in Park Slope is a travesty. I trust the CB6 will look into this matter more closely when considering the hospital's request and reject that request. Thank you very much.
then Rory Deneen. We have Paul Levy. Paul Levy. Okay, crossing him out. We're going to go to Hillary Hughes and then Rory Deneen. Hillary Hughes and then Rory Deneen. No Hillary Hughes. Okay. We're going to go to... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Rory Deneen. I'm a resident of 6th Street, down the block here, and a longtime resident and colleague of my friend and neighbor Jane Wheeler for the 656 Block Association. My daughter was born in Methodist Hospital, a highlight of my life, very supportive of Methodist Hospital, but I believe this is not a progressive design. And I don't think it'll have a good impact on the neighborhood, and I think it's going to have a very negative impact on the issues pertaining to sewage, air quality, water quality, traffic, and the safety of our children. So I urge the board to reject the variance request. Thank you very much.
Abby Leshis, or L-E-S-H-E-S, and then Bennett Kleinberg.
My name is Avi Leshis. I'm the project manager of economic development at the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. I live in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, not too far away. The Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, Brooklyn in general is booming, and its growth has been reflected in New York Methodist patient census and patient services. While many hospitals have inpatient volume go down in recent years, New York Methodist has grown even as changes in healthcare delivery and technology led to a shift from inpatient to outpatient services. Both the state of New York and private insurers are encouraging providers to offer services that can safely be done on an outpatient basis. Since these procedures require less time spent in the hospital and therefore provides a more affordable option for patients, the new healthcare delivery system assumes such centers will be incorporated into hospitals. For over 130 years, New York Methodist has provided healthcare services for Park Slope and Greater Brooklyn community. The hospital adds greater value to the community not only through the medical services it provides, but also as the economic anchor of Park Slope's main commercial strip. Brooklyn hospitals are important components to the vibrancy of communities. Typically, they hire thousands of local employees, make large purchases from surrounding businesses, which in turn attracts more businesses to the area. In addition, the accessibility of medical services and quality healthcare is often a consideration for both businesses and individuals to relocate to an area. Naturally, the expansion of New York Methodist outpatient services will serve to further increase the economic vibrancy of Park Slope. As a reasonable corporate citizen, New York Methodist has gone to great lengths to make the community aware of their proposed plan, to expand and solicit the feedback on the plan. In late June, hospital representatives began explaining the need of preserving very preliminary plans for the new building to the community leaders and various community groups. For example, the residents of 5th Street between 7th and 8th Avenues and the residents of 8th Avenue between 5th and 6th Street. In mid-July, the Parks and Civic Council, trustees and CB6 Land Use Committee held a larger joint meeting that was open to the public and which further broader community input was solicited. A special email address was established, and it had received a number of messages about project throughout the summer, some with detailed comments, suggestions, as well as questions and expressions of concern. Many procedures that once kept patients in the hospitals for a few weeks can now be done using minimally invasive techniques that allow them to go home the same day. This is more convenient for the patients and results in greater efficiency and lower cost. When a hospital invests in expanding the suite of services, new opportunities for additional economic development involve in the neighborhoods that they serve. For these reasons, the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce is in full support of the New York Methodist's plan to expand their outpatient services. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Bennett Kleinberg and then Linda Fleischer.
Hi, my name is Bennett Kleinberg. I've been a resident of 5th Street since 2000. I thought it was very nice that the hospital wrote that memo that the last fellow read. It was very generous of him. I'm holding in my hand actually the EAS application and the BSA application, and I would love to see a show of hands if anyone has actually read all 400 pages of this, because I have. 10 years ago this week, my life was totally saved by New York Methodist, by a team of very caring, smart medical professionals who worked tirelessly for 42 days to reverse the effects of septic shock and multiple organ failure. You won't hear another speaker up here say that because the other people are all dead. There's only a 10% survival rate. I was placed on dialysis and a ventilator and spent 3 weeks in a coma at Methodist. My survival was so unusual and so unlikely that Lynn Hill asked to highlight my case in the 2004 New York Methodist Annual Report. Over the past decade, I've become one of the hospital's biggest supporters, sitting on the New York Methodist Community Committee and dedicating a small plaque in the lobby to the doctors who saved my life. I owe my life to that hospital and have been distraught and distressed over the past 6 months as Methodist has moved aggressively to push this project through without adequate community input and without listening to the needs of the many people who are sitting here tonight. This project is not about need, it's about greed. By their own admission, the complying building will require 52 months of construction. Essentially, they are requesting a variance tonight because it presents a cheaper alternative to the 36 months that the proposed project would take. At the same time, the hospital, as others have said tonight, have not provided any evidence to demonstrate how this project will improve the healthcare situation in Brooklyn. In all 400 pages of the documents I'm holding in my hand tonight, there is not one single solitary sentence which discusses how this project tonight will improve the decaying situation at Litch and at Interfaith Medical Center. The bottom line is this: if this project were so truly essential to the future of the hospital, why is it that not one single member of the hospital's board or senior leadership team is sitting here with us tonight?
And then David Hirsch. We have a Linda Fleischer? No? Okay, then is David Hirsch here?
Certainly be hard to be as dramatic as the last speaker. I'm writing as an architect, a partner in a Manhattan architectural firm, and a resident of Park Slope for 45 years. So far, only one speaker, I think, has exceeded that. I participated in the original landmark designation report, and I joined with Preserve Park Slope in asking that the board give reconsideration to this plan. The New York zoning resolution describes the general purpose of all residence districts as the following: to protect residential areas against congestion as far as possible by regulating the density of population and the bulk of buildings in relation to the land around them. To protect the character of certain designated areas of historic and architectural interest where the scale of buildings development is important by limiting the height of buildings. I just don't think this architectural firm or this hospital has considered what the purpose of the zoning is. New York Methodist is absolute in its disregard of these principles. As required to apply to the Board of Standards and Appeals for the numerous zoning violations in this proposal, the hospital must show need and hardship. As amply documented by Stuart Klein, the proposal, the Stuart Klein, Preserve Park Slope's lawyer, they have failed to do so. But even if they were able to demonstrate these limitations, the hospital should not be allowed to trump these basic zoning principles. If this project is to proceed at all, the hospital and the architects must go back to the drawing board and find a way to reduce the building's bulk and respect the neighborhood's scale and character. This process should include some of the wiser members of the community to make sure the hospital is properly looking after the general good.
30 seconds.
The Kramer-Levin justification of the present scheme purports to show that this latest submission is the result of changes they made to the original design. If that's the case, then I can't imagine how bad the original design was. There's some very practical and obvious things that could be done. You can relocate the building support and materials management and clinic support to the facilities over the parking lot area. There are certainly many aspects of this plan that can be relocated, and they should.
Please. Thank you. Next speakers are Josh Levin and Brian Heller. Are either of those people here? Josh Levin and Brian Heller.
My name is Josh Levin. I work for Assemblywoman Joan Millman. Unfortunately, the Assemblywoman is unable to be here this evening. In her absence, I will read her testimony. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in regards to the zoning variance for the New York Methodist Hospital expansion plan. I want to thank Community Board Chairman Daniel Toomer and Chairs Peter Fleming and Bob Levine of Brooklyn Community Board 6's Landmarks Land Use Committee. We owe a great amount of thanks to these volunteer chairs who oversee this evening's public meeting. I would also like to thank the committee members who will be tasked with voting on the zoning variance. Healthcare service is in a transitional period throughout our country, and tonight's public hearing is no different than the debate we are having statewide and even nationally. How should healthcare be delivered to the people of New York? A generation ago, people used to undergo long and invasive surgeries that took days or weeks to recover from. Today, non-invasive procedures can be carried out in a few hours, and patients can be back on their feet in a matter of days. The fact is, just like computer technology, medical advancements are changing the way medicine is delivered every year. To keep pace with medical advancements, hospitals are constantly retooling their facilities, but only so much can be done within the walls of a building before the task of expansion comes into the discussion. The plan before us is not one that every person in this room will agree with. The proposal would result in a larger building in a historic neighborhood, an increase of automobile traffic, and 3 years of construction. At the same time, though, the Park Slope community and the borough of Brooklyn will retain a vital resource, a hospital that is flourishing. 2.5 miles from here, there is a different narrative. The once flourishing Long Island College Hospital is slated for closure. I and my colleagues in government, along with many community leaders and union members, have been fighting to keep this hospital open. I'm dismayed by the prospect of a shuttered hospital, and for that reason, I stand here in support of the zoning variance for New York Methodist Hospital. As I said before, healthcare delivery is changing, and through conversations with New York Methodist Hospital, as well as briefings from my staff who have attended every community meeting since this past summer, I have come to the conclusion that this expansion is necessary in order to continue the delivery of quality care of Brooklyn.
Quiet, please.
New York Methodist and the project consultants have engaged the community in a manner that few development projects ever come close to. There has been an open line of communication with changes as a result of community input. We are still in the beginning phases of this project, and I am certain that New York Methodist Hospital will remain very engaged with the community throughout the planning and construction process. I, my staff, and my colleagues in government will continue to be involved throughout this project. This is an important step in the right direction, and I hope the community and Brooklyn Community Board 6 agree. Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening.
Okay, the next speakers are, and I apologize if it wasn't clear, but obviously when I call time, you are welcome to finish your sentence. It's not necessarily to stop in your tracks. You're welcome to finish the sentence you're working on when I call time. The next speaker is Brian Heller, and after that, and I apologize for the mispronunciation, Lon Schindler. Brian Heller. No Brian Heller. How about a Lon Schindler? Okay, look like Lon. Sorry.
Thank you, Board Chair Coomer and committee chairs. My name is Laurie Schindler, and I'm a resident of 6th Street, just below 6th Avenue. Prior to living on 6th Street, I was a near neighbor of the hospital on 5th Street, just below 8th Avenue, during the time of the 7th Avenue project. My experience working with the hospital was positive. I'm submitting this testimony in favor of the application submitted to the Board of Standard and Appeals for a variance to construct the ambulatory care facility on the hospital campus. I believe at the end of the day, the impacts of the project proposed in the variance application would be substantially similar to those which would result from building as of right, or what the variance application calls the complying development, and that it would be a misuse of the community input process to use this variance application as a way to derail the project. There is some question as to the necessity for so much parking, and should the numbers bear out, I would certainly testify in favor of an application to reduce the amount of parking provided in the project. Along these lines, there is also the opportunity to address the increase in vehicular trips to the expanded hospital in a constructive way, which I believe was the motivation for Councilmember Lander to convene a task force, which is already working, to study traffic and transportation in the project area with an eye towards solutions. As important as traffic and transportation and parking are, these things should bear no impact on the outcome of tonight's meeting. We are in the midst of a changing landscape in how healthcare is delivered in Brooklyn and beyond. We are fortunate to have a hospital in our community that is well managed and at present fiscally sound. The project at hand is an investment not only in the hospital but in healthcare for our future. And I urge the committees to recommend approval of the hospital's application for a zoning variance to the BSA.
Thank you. The next two speakers are Isabel Hill and Terrence Saki. Isabel Hill and Terrence Saki.
Hi there. I'm here to express my opposition to the application for a BSA variance for New York Methodist Hospital's expansion. Can you hear me now? Yes. As it's submitted, I'm not opposing the concept of hospital expansion. I am, however, opposing the plan that's been submitted for the following reasons. The size and mass configuration of the expansion is out of context for the neighborhood. The actual spatial needs for the hospital should be more fully analyzed, keeping on the table that satellite hospital operations could be kept in place, and thus the project could be downsized and right-sized for the neighborhood. The expansion project, as proposed, would concentrate and exacerbate the traffic problems our neighborhood already experiences. Again, downsizing and reconfiguring the expansion could greatly mitigate these traffic issues. The materials, texture, and scale of the proposed development are not in keeping with the, to use the architect's word, DNA of Park Slope. The architect's goal of trying to make the buildings more contextual misses the target. The proposed structures are monolithic. The building scale overwhelms 8th Avenue. As a preservationist, city planner, and resident of Park Slope, I'm sad to see the brownstones on 8th Avenue torn down. However, I do think a new structure has the potential to be an exciting addition to the streetscape, but it must be carefully and sensitively designed, in keeping with the scale and character of Park Slope, especially since we're being asked to give up an element of what makes our neighborhood unique. Scaling down and articulating the facades, really making a series of facades with more human scale that are pedestrian friendly, needs to be explored. These plans must be revamped and the BSA application process put on hold to make a better plan for expansion.
and I have a little trouble with this one. I think it's Robert Braunschweiger.
Terry Sackey. I live on 2nd Street. I've lived here for 30 years. But more importantly, I've been born in Brooklyn. My mom still is in Brooklyn. I'm very, very supportive of Brooklyn. When I completed my training, I made a decision to locate back to Brooklyn. And immediately what I found, very, very, very obviously, that there was a tremendous dichotomy of care between Manhattan and Brooklyn. And for my own personal view, was that perhaps some of us that got the benefit of living in Brooklyn, getting an education, and coming back would stay in an attempt to better the care and decrease that difference between the two-tiered system, if you will. I trained for several years at St. Vincent's, which is a beautiful hospital, with tremendous work, and is now closed. I initially relocated to Brooklyn, and I was at Long Island College Hospital, a very good hospital with great doctors and great people, and is now on the brink of closure. 10 years ago, an opportunity arose, and I came to Methodist. At that time, it was a good hospital. In the last 10 years, it's become an exceedingly good hospital, and I think it's on the cusp of something even better. The problem is, and I've heard the differences, and I really can't speak to variances and architectural designs, but one thing that I'd like to correct is that we have outgrown in our growth and the bringing of quality in our plant. We need to expand, and I am more concerned about not so much the Park Slope community, but really the 2.8 million people in Brooklyn. Yes, healthcare is changing, and I know Litch better than many people in this room, I might say. And to go forward in providing comprehensive healthcare, you need some stable hospitals, very high quality, evidence-based medicine in our borough, in Brooklyn, and it just happens to be in Park Slope. The only constant of change is that it creates loss.
30 seconds, please.
Clearly, there are people that are going to win and lose in the transition. We see in the Affordable Care Act, everyone would say that there is absolute good in the intent of it. But in the execution, there are people that will win and some people that are going to lose. I would just say that to help healthcare in Brooklyn and Park Slope, that this project is something that is valuable and it's something that will benefit everyone in Brooklyn.
Robert Braunschweiger and then Irene Loret.
I'm Robert Braunschweiger. I'm an architect and urban planner. I live on 8th Street between 7th and 8th Avenue. New York Methodist Hospital is requesting approval for a variance to allow it to exceed the allowed building square footage, the allowed height, and to reduce the required rear yard requirements. In my opinion, all these actions will degrade the character of the neighborhood and are caused solely by the desire of the hospital to build more than is allowed. In return for granting of additional square footage, other than the hospital is offering this package community nothing. I request and urge you to deny the request.
Irene Ray and then Andrea Stewart.
Hi everybody, I see a lot of familiar faces. My name is Irene Moray and I'm talking for myself and my partner Pat Kelly, my spouse. And thank you. I would like to say that to the both of us, wanting a bigger and better Methodist hospital is a no-brainer. In fact, we consider ourselves lucky to have a vibrant, comprehensive medical facility in our community. There are certain services cities should not be without, and on the top of that list is good medical care. Whenever we consider even the best scenarios for change, there are always some negative consequences, and we have to ask ourselves, is it worth it? To us, it is a resounding yes, and despite some of the disadvantages. For example, I have my own personal take on traffic. You know, it's like, I've been to places where there's no traffic. No lights, no congestion, no people, nothing to do. And when you go to places like that, let me give you some medical advice. Find out where the nearest hospital is and how long it's going to take you to get there. On a personal note, I spent the day today at New York Presbyterian, and my sister's lucky to have Dr. Morton Coleman, and she has cancer. And what's going on there needs to go on in Brooklyn, and we should be a part of letting that start to happen. Medical facilities, chemotherapy, experimental drug therapy, they're finally beginning to knock cancer out of the box. But anyway, I really believe that we, too, here in Brooklyn, deserve a first-class medical facility. People talk about the noise in construction also because of such a project. But in listening, I mean, Methodists can do it anyway, with all, as of right, so you can still be stuck with you'll still be stuck with construction and that kind of problem. So like, my thought on that is, okay, we should take IQ tests or something, because it seems as though they have the right to expand. And as people have mentioned, St. Vincent's is gone, Litch is no longer admitting patients, and with a growing population, we need more health services, not less. If a hospital does not grow and improve, it will die. It must be on the top of its game, providing best practices and comprehensive services to attract the best doctors to give great care, and we all deserve that.
Thank you, Irene. Andrea Stewart, and then Andrea Farrington.
I'm Andrea Stewart. I live on 5th Street between 8th Avenue and Prospect Park West, and this is my message to Methodist and to the community board. Not against the hospital expanding. I've used the hospital. I'm happy with the hospital. However, there's so many reasons that this plan does not fit in Park Slope. Most of all, it's about programmatic need. I didn't read all 400 pages of the BSA and the environmental impact statement. However, I did read most of it, and what I found was that if you look at it, there's only 80,000 of the 500,000 square feet that is for expanded services. That building is a lot more than 80,000 feet. This means that there's 220,000 square feet of their 300,000 is for what? To make room for more private rooms in the hospital? To make money? Would it make more sense to build an 80,000 square foot facility, which could be built closer to 7th Avenue as well? My next point is that Methodist tends to dismiss any of the ideas that we come to them with, and you'll notice that because there is no backing support in the BSA. For instance, we mentioned Litch. Why can't you build over at Litch? They say it needs to be adjacent to the hospital. This isn't true. Columbia Presbyterian has ambulatory care, which is far away from Columbia's main campus. In fact, when I say far, I mean 2 miles away. Litch is 2 miles away. Finally, I come to the Landmark District. All the people here tonight live in the Landmark District, which is the largest landmark district in the city. And as such, anytime we want to make a change to our buildings, such as just adding storm windows, we have to get approval. Well, somehow, back in 2009, the hospital got around that. Unfortunately, that deal was done, and at this point, they agreed to build in a way that fits into the character of the neighborhood. Well, I think we all agree this does not fit into the character of the neighborhood, and that is required. Also, we say, can you use the facades? Can you preserve the facades? They said, no, there's no proof of that. In fact, if you go into the city, Bedford Street has a number of buildings where the entire building has been removed, and they have saved the brownstone facades.
Farrington? Okay, no. Bill Priestley? Bill Priestley, Bill Priestley, 595 6th Street. He left, okay. I'm sorry, I can't read the handwriting on this one. First name begins with an A, last name with an S, 519 8th Avenue on the pro list. Tom Wacker. Leslie Arberman.
Hi, my name is Leslie Arberman. I live on 6th Street, I think since 1970, but at my age, years go by. I just don't remember. A couple of things strike me. I didn't come prepared. I'm sort of prepared to play off what some people have said. It's very striking to me that those of us who, for a variety of very good reasons, don't want the expansion, have come prepared, unlike me. But people have come really prepared with statistics and diagrams and so on. And what's striking is that those who have millions, if not billions of dollars invested in one way or another, have very little to say other than a couple of physicians who probably are very good, who I might go to if I didn't have my own, essentially saying, I like my job and I'm glad I can walk to work. Good for them. That's really terrific. I envy them. And a couple of people who have had very good care at Methodist Hospital. I vote for them because I've also had very good care at Methodist Hospital. I've heard very little substantial arguments concerning why Methodist has to expand the way it intends. Every business has to expand. But this seems to me, as a simple, non-architectural buffoon, nonsense. That's number one. Second point I'd like to make. As I get older, I become more involved in my head, I don't share this with too many people, in conspiratorial theories. Now, I don't think that the expansion here is clearly conspiratorial. But in every organization, however valid, there's always a dark side. You can look to mythology, you can look to psychology, you can look to religion. There's a dark side. In Judaism, we call it the Yetzer Hara, the dark side, the evil side. For example, just off the top of my head, people have talked about traffic. Absolutely, it's going to be a nightmare. When Methodist first expanded here, there was a promise of a huge garage at discount prices. Well, I paid $40 a night the other night because I couldn't find a spot to park. So in the future, it's going to be a toss-up for me. Should I pay a $45 ticket and just be done with it, or go look for a spot in the parking lot? There's money to be made here. I don't know who's making the money. I don't know who's going to have the concession. But I promise you, in some of the things I've read, there's going to be room for 1,000 cars.
30 seconds.
30,000 cars, not 30 seconds, 30,000 cars, 1,000 cars. I'm getting old. Who's going to earn that money? Is it going to be a concession? Is it going to be discounted? If I live in the neighborhood, do I get a discount like physicians who come here? I just don't know. And thank you very much.
Right now I'm going to recognize Councilman Brad Lander to speak. Okay, that's fine. Lori Wheelock, who represents Jim Brennan.
Good evening. My name is Lori Wheelock. I'm Legislative Counsel to Assemblymember Jim Brennan. He apologized that he couldn't be here tonight. He had a long-standing commitment in the city, but he asked that I read his testimony. Jim has represented, our office has been represented at several of the community meetings thus far, and we've read all the correspondence that's been sent to our office. We've received emails, phone calls, letters. Residents have come in off the street and chatted with us and met with Jim, and we want to encourage people to continue to come to our office and have these discussions because they are vital. Jim is sympathetic to the local residents about the increased congestion, especially traffic in the area due to the expansion, and has observed the current congestion regularly, even when he's walking around or just driving in the area. And he asked that Methodist Hospital and their traffic safety, security, as well as the 70th Precinct, continue to work together to address the current congestion issues, as well as anything that moves forward with the project. Jim thinks that given the project will bring additional healthcare services to our community, the thing that we need to do is to work together through the problems and make sure that all issues are properly addressed and effectively managed. Jim is aware that although the hospital is seeking the 5 variances from the zoning resolution to build one building, it does have the ability to construct a building as of right under the zoning resolution without seeking the variances. And the as of right construction, which we've talked about and many speakers before me have discussed, we require 2 buildings, not the one being proposed, due to the zoning setback requirements. It would take twice as much time as one building, meaning a construction period that could last 8 to 10 years. This would be highly undesirable. Jim wanted to mention that a great example is the New York Hospital Complex in Manhattan that serves as a good example of response to traffic congestion. Currently, the New York Police Department deploys traffic agents at the hospital to manage traffic circulation and reduce congestion. Our office has written to the NYPD Transportation Bureau and the department that is involved with the location of all the traffic agents, and we've requested that they assign traffic agents now to the hospital location, both in the short term and then with any construction in the future. We're also asking the hospital tonight to continue convening the hospital's community council, to continue inviting local residents, the community board, the police precinct, and the local elected officials to have these discussions on a regular basis. The hospital has informed Jim that it has also added security personnel on the street to help with traffic circulation. However, there are lots of other concerns, many of which have already been discussed tonight, such as timing of truck loading, garbage pickup, double parking, triple parking, which need to be addressed, and we look forward to continuing to have those discussions. Jim understands that the hospital expansion is intended to provide more health care and treat people with outpatient services. Methodist Hospital has a great reputation for care, and again, everything that's going on with Brooklyn Hospitals right now, we need to make sure to work together to ensure the best care that the Brooklyn residents deserve. Once again, our office will work with local residents to prevent a reduction in the quality of services. We're located right on 7th Street at 416. Come visit us. Again, my name is Lori. Jim apologizes he can't be here, and we continue to look forward to have these discussions with you. Thank you so much.
The next 2 speakers are Fred Siporin and John Golub.
I would like to know why people think that anybody here is against medical care provided by Methodist. And also, I'm going to say this because it's an example from my life. I was an important publishing executive in a very important industry in this city. And I mention that because I have sat through and given many presentations to people who are paid a lot of money to run big corporations. And I sat here listening to Lynn Hill present the case of Methodist Hospital, and I can tell you that was the worst presentation that I've ever heard. It would go nowhere in private industry. It said nothing, and the other thing it did, it was very insulting to have them threaten us with, if you don't do this bad thing, we will do something even worse. I know I look 2 years younger than I actually am, but I can tell you that when I first came to the slope, it was just about, if you walk up 5th Street to 8th Avenue, you'll see an empty lot, which people park in. There used to be an apartment building there. That building isn't there because there's a stream that flows under that surface. And what I would like the hospital to present us with is an environmental study that will tell us where the sewage is going and whether, when they start this construction, your foundations of the houses you live in will be safe. Will water be diverted? I won't get into all, there's a whole lot of stuff that's missing simply because there's no environmental impact study of any merit. The other thing is that I hate the hypocrisy of people who serve themselves or their own vested interests and present it as the public good. If they gave a crap for the public, they would be involved in saving Long Island College Hospital and the 8 other hospitals that didn't close if they cared so much for the health care delivery in Brooklyn. It's a fraud, and these people are about themselves, unfortunately. And you could see it in that very poor presentation.
John Golub, and then the next speaker is Gloria Matra.
Okay, my name is John Golub. I'm a resident of 7th Street, and I am here to oppose the motion to grant variances. If the hospital is telling us the truth and they really need 500,000 square feet, they can build a facility like that 2 blocks from this hospital on vacant land without a zoning variance. That location is not in Prospect Park, but at the foot of 5th Street on the other side of 4th Avenue. That is a super block bounded by 3rd Street and 6th Street. And if you look at Google Maps, 50% of that lot is vacant. It is occupied by a parking lot. And I think that the hospital would be served, and so would its patients, and so would the community if that facility was located there. It would be served by much more transportation. The subways R and F and G at 9th Street, and by a bus along 4th Avenue. And I think that would I don't know if that would present real estate problems, but it certainly wouldn't impact the neighborhood as this present proposal is threatening to do.
The next speaker is Gloria Matra, or Matra. No Gloria? Okay. John Foster? No John Foster. Jesse Rosenfeld. Jesse Rosenfeld. No. First initial C, Vane Dellis, 284 7th Avenue. No. First initial P, Garson. No. Michael Henry. After that, Dr. Andrew Vickers.
Hi, my name is Michael Henry. I've been a resident of 7th Street for about 20 years. And I originally came here tonight to speak about traffic concerns, which, as Ms. Gardner said, is required for the board to consider under the Cornell Doctrine. But just listening here tonight, I am struck by the vague wish by Methodist Hospital, coupled with threats that they will either shut down like LICH, or that they'll build the other horrible thing anyway, with a lack of hard data, which is striking to me. When I first heard about the proposal, I wasn't too concerned. We had lived through the other construction on 7th Street, and it was inconvenient and horrible, but we live in a city, and it was okay. And I was favorably inclined towards Methodist, and I heard Brad Lander was in favor, and I liked Brad Lander, right? So then I got the traffic study, and I was really excited because 7th Street and 7th Avenue is a terrible intersection, and it's double parked car service and ambulance backing up and large streets. It's terrible. That's why I eagerly went to the traffic study to see what they said about that intersection, and it's not there. The traffic study very conveniently leaves out discussion of the most affected intersections. And the traffic on 7th Avenue between 9th Street and 7th Street, which is double parked. And I started wondering that maybe Methodist is not operating in such good faith. That maybe Councilman Lander's general take on it, that he trusts Methodist to do the right thing because they're a good organization, maybe needs a little bit more poking. They're not providing us with facts. Their entire EAS is a bad faith document comparing it to the as-of-right bill, which gives this body absolutely no useful information about what it should be doing, about whether this building will serve the community on balance or not. It's a joke and it's an insult, and it makes me question their good faith. And finally, about the traffic also, as someone else mentioned, 43% of the traffic, according to Transportation Alternatives, is people circling looking for spaces. So there's not one car trip generated, right? And we don't know the details of what the parking lot situation is going to be. How much is it going to cost? Is it going to be cost attractive to people? Or will they decide it's worth half an hour to circle 20 times? So there's a lot here that hasn't been really presented. There's no meaningful data for a huge project except a vague threat that medical care is good, that glitch going out of business is bad, and that somehow... The other thing is, if you are going to say, we would like a big central outpatient facility to attract thousands of visitors a year, you would put it in a place with transportation infrastructure, not in a place that has narrow residential streets, commercial streets only 2 lanes wide that are already very congested, 1 subway line. This is not the place to put a magnet.
Time, please. Jennifer Washburn.
My name is Andrew Vickers. I'm an attending statistician in the Health Outcomes Research Group at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. I'm also a professor of public health at Cornell, which makes me faculty, essentially, at Methodist. I'm kind of surprised to be pretty much the only one here. I disagree with the expansion for reasons I will shortly give. My academic research has been widely used to support expansions because I've shown, and it's absolutely convincing, that it's better to have specialist care at high volume hospitals than to have that care dotted around. So I support expansions. I understand hospitals, I understand expansions. A previous speaker mentions the building at 1133 York Avenue. I've been very closely associated with the building of that new building at Memorial Sloan Kettering. So I'm very, very pro-expansion. I just don't like this expansion. This is a bad expansion. If you're going to build a hospital, a high volume hospital, you don't do it in a large mega hospital in a small residential area with narrow clogged streets. We've been here now for nearly 3 hours. I am yet to hear a single argument about why an expansion has to be this expansion, other than the fact that we have a gun to your head. You will do things our way, otherwise we will make things worse for you. So, do I like the care at Methodist Hospital? Yes. Again, my kids have been treated there. Do I like the doctors? Do I support Pastor Mita's thoughts about healing and why we need good medical care in Brooklyn? Of course. Absolutely. Does it have to be a mega hospital in a small residential neighborhood? It does not. I haven't had a single co-member of my faculty come and explain to me why it has to be this way. So I urge the board to reject this waiver. Thank you.
Jennifer, we're going to hear from Brad Lander. So.
Well, I'm not accustomed to speaking publicly, and I just want to give some perspective to the board about how extraordinary this grassroots movement is that you see before you. Everyone in this room works really hard, full-time jobs. I'm very grateful to all of you for the work that you do on this board. I think that what we share is that we, like you, have a really serious commitment to this neighborhood. And we have a serious commitment to healthcare in Brooklyn, and I think all of us agree that the healthcare needs of Brooklyn are incredibly important. I hope you don't see this as just a NIMBY campaign of not in my backyard. I really don't think that's accurate. I think that what we've presented is extraordinary in terms of our questions about the hospital's integrity in dealing with the community and really being reasonable with us about what the impact of this project would be and how patients will actually be served given our narrow streets, our poor access roads, our poor public transit routes into this neighborhood. It just, on so many levels, this is not just a NIMBY campaign. And I just want to stress that. When I set up a table over one weekend, there were a handful of people. We set up a table, we asked people to sign these petitions that we've given to you. And in one weekend, we got 450 signatures from people who basically, this was the pitch that I said to them. I said the hospital is proposing this massive high-rise expansion. Their own plans say that there will be no measurable increase in traffic and no measurable impact on the environment in our community. We think that that's ludicrous, and we want Community Board 6 to call for an independent traffic study and a proper comprehensive environmental assessment. And when I said that, 450 people signed that petition, and that was over 2 days. And it was not easy to take the time to do that. So I just want you to know that if that level of distrust and concern is there in the community, that we really entrust you to tell Methodists that they have to go back to the drawing board and they have to do a proper environmental impact statement and really present us with legitimate data justifying the variances that they're asking for.
Good evening. First I want to thank Daniel and Peter and the members of the board and everyone who came out tonight. I'm not going to make you happy, but I am going to come down here and talk to you about it because I think that's important. So if you don't want me to talk, I don't have to, but I did come. I know who's in the room. I understand. So if you want to listen, I'm glad to talk. If you want to shut me down,
Quiet.
I'm City Councilmember Brad Lander. And if you and if you want to keep shouting, it's fine. I'll sit back down and listen, and we can talk another time. Look, I'm real mindful of what people are here and saying, and I've been listening since the summer, and I'm glad to keep listening to you, and I'm glad to keep pushing Methodists to think about the ways in which they can adapt and amend the plans to make them work as well as they can in our neighborhood to achieve the long-term continued health of the hospital. And I will be honest, a lot of my thinking on this is shaped by the time I've spent over the last year fighting to save Litch. I went to jail fighting to save Litch. I've spent, hundreds of hours on the Litch situation. And what I am persuaded is Litch is failing in part because they didn't have good long-term strategic planning for what was necessary for a hospital to do to be able to continue to operate in the 21st century. I spent a lot of time looking at it there. I spent a lot of time looking at it here. We could imagine a different healthcare system. We could imagine a different hospital infrastructure than the one we have, that's for sure. But I think we're lucky to have neighborhood healthcare institutions. And I think if we want Methodists to be able to continue for the next 100 years to function as a neighborhood healthcare institution, then we have to try to figure out how to meet them halfway in thinking about what's necessary for their continued. I guess what I will say is I've dealt with them a lot over the last 4 years. I don't believe there are any nefarious or conspiratorial intentions. I don't believe anyone's making money from this expansion. I've seen a lot of, you can laugh if you want. I've seen a lot of condo developers. I've seen a lot of for-profit developers of both residential and commercial space. I know when we're dealing with for-profit actors whose motives are the profit, whose motives are bottom line. And when that is the case, I take a very different approach. But honestly, this is a nonprofit institution. Its mission is to provide health care. The reason they're proposing this expansion is that they believe it's necessary for the long-term continuance of the institution to work and be able to provide. Now, you can argue back, but I gotta say, when the argument is they're here to make a buck, they're here to screw us, they're longtime bad faith partners, I don't see it, and that's because I've been trying to work with them for a long period of time. I will also say, I think within the context of an institution like that, they have been listening. There were this summer a series of meetings, more meetings at the Civic Council, more meetings that they held than I've seen in many an institution like this, and they made a bunch of changes in response to what neighbors have said. If there are other things that people have to propose that can be concretely changed to adapt this and make it work better for the neighborhood, then I would like to hear them. Catherine Zinnell, who's my district director, is here, would like to hear them. I'd love to push Methodists to do them. I'd love to push the community board to think about what they look like. If there are concrete changes to this proposal that can help it meet its goals, and you don't have to like that they could do an as-of-right development that's basically about as large, it is the case. So if the goal is how do we make this work as best as possible for the neighborhood, let's hear some more ideas, and let's try to figure out what more we can do to push and adapt the plan to make it work. They've made a bunch of changes already, and I think they will be willing, I hope they will be willing, and I will certainly be willing to push. I want to say one thing about what my office is doing, because I don't actually have a vote on this process. A variance goes before the Board of Standards and Appeals. It doesn't, unlike a ULURP, come before the City Council. So the Community Board actually has to vote. I don't have to vote. That also means I didn't have to come here tonight and face a room of people who I know I'm making unhappy. But I did say, you know what, let me try to step up and see how I can figure out if I'm going to be generally supportive, make it a little better. And so we have convened a traffic task force. We've had 2 meetings now, one a walk around on the block. If you're interested in getting involved, you should talk to Catherine later tonight. We're trying to figure out, there's obviously a whole series of traffic challenges and parking challenges in the neighborhood already. We're spending some time looking at the 7th and 7th intersection where the ambulances cause a problem. That's not going to be amplified by the ambulatory care center, but it's already bad, and we've got to take steps to try to make it better. So my office will continue to keep doing that, regardless of what the board does here, regardless of how the process goes forward. If you have thoughts and suggestions on traffic, on parking, in the areas around it. I will also point out we're convening a new Parksville Street Safety Partnership. not focused on Methodist, but focused on improving street safety in the community. First meeting is December 3rd at Park Slope United Methodist, and Catherine has flyers. I hope you'll join us there. We do want to keep the dialogue open. I understand the vast majority of people in this room don't agree with me on it. I will keep listening. I appreciate your point of view, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to mine. Thank you.
The next two speakers are Elizabeth Sollers and Meredith Little. Yes, no, maybe?
Hi. Everybody can hear me, I hope. My name is Meredith Little. I live on 6th Street between Prospect Park West and 8th Avenue. When I moved to this area, I had a very young child and elderly parents in my home, and I was thrilled to be that close to a hospital. I figured I'd be spending a lot of time there, so it was good being close. In the years that have followed, I've yet to make a visit to the hospital, thankfully, but I have seen how a neighborhood that borders this facility functions, and I have many objections that stem from my observations and the filing that Methodist has submitted. Here are a few of them. This neighborhood and my street specifically is overburdened with traffic already. While Methodist traffic study was done at hours that do not reflect the nature of this community, it is plainly obvious to a casual observer that, especially during the beginning and end of the school day, and during funeral, wedding, and celebration services, 8th Avenue and 6th Street are dangerously clogged. Ambulances with sirens and lights sit in unmoving traffic jams for 20 minutes at a time quite frequently, and ambulance, hospital employees, and visitors scream down 6th Street, weaving between cars, dropping off and picking up children. Additionally, visitors unfamiliar with the area are constantly making one-way turns on one-way streets, risking both their lives and the lives of the huge number of pedestrians and cyclists in the area. The construction of this project will turn my street, 6th Street, into a parking lot of construction vehicles. The scores of small children and elderly people living and visiting the street will be sucking down exhaust, dust, and construction debris from early in the morning until late into the day. Given the street is used as a visitors and employee conduit to the hospital, the noise pollution from drivers trying to get around, hospital-related traffic, and construction vehicles trying to navigate the small, narrow, and completely residential street will be nonstop and completely detrimental to the varied nature of this community. I was going to talk about the pedestrian entrance, but that seems to be in flux. And the safety of this neighborhood and the myriad of guests and visitors that will be visiting the hospital will be at risk. Dangerous traffic conditions and an overloading of our streets and sidewalks will not benefit anyone, neither those of us trying to function here on a daily basis, nor hospital visitors, many of whom will be in poor health or distracted by the healthcare needs of their loved ones. So to CB6, I urge you not to pass this variance and encourage Methodists to reconsider their plans in light of the needs of the community they themselves are part of.
Nancy Workman. And Dan Pietro.
Hi, I'm Dr. Nancy Workman. I'm a psychologist. I'm a psychologist at Kings County Hospital. I work in outpatient care. I'm also a resident of 5th Street, right around the corner in that whited out area that's outside the lots outside the project. I'm also a proud parent of a child in this school who just started at Park Slope Collegiate. And I'm also a patient. I received outpatient specialty care at Methodist. My deep concerns about this proposal and the proposed variance reflect my different roles in the community. As a parent, it seems unconscionable to add the level of traffic and congestion. Especially, I'm always aware of this intersection in particular at 7th Avenue and 5th Street with kids spilling out of the school. It's already dangerous. And also the areas around the school. As we know, it's very dense with children in this neighborhood. We're also, as a community, still grieving the loss of children who have died as a result of traffic accidents in this area. And it's of high concern to add this level of traffic. Moreover, as someone who works with underserved populations in Brooklyn, I have deep concerns about this expansion before we understand whether the healthcare needs of the Brooklyn community are being met. We need more information. Apparently, we need to see a certificate of need, and we need more time. I worry about the revenue-driven nature of outpatient care. I work in outpatient care. The loss of inpatient hospital beds, the centralization of services at the expense of community-based clinics, and the relative lack of jobs for healthcare workers that seem to be added by this project to the extent that we have information about it. I also am concerned that in the changing landscape of healthcare, whether it's a time that Methodists can actually project whether this project is viable and what will we do if it fails. There's so many levels of concern that have already been addressed very eloquently. So many of us do care deeply about the healthcare needs of the Brooklyn community and about the needs of healthcare workers as well. And we just have to see more information to see whether Methodist so-called needs are truly necessary.
Just to let you know, we have been given a little bit of extra time, so we are going to continue. Next speaker, Dan V. Pietro. No? Rob Meas and Richard Ferrara.
My name is Richard Ferrara. I live at 457 7th Street. I've lived there since 1969. I'm a former president of the Park Slope Civic Council. And I want to say that I am against this proposal. My story starts in 1970. At that time, members of the community formed an organization to prevent the hospital from tearing down the 8 tenements which fronted on 7th Avenue, to prevent them, to protect the people who lived in them, and also to prevent the hospital from building a facility which probably would have been bigger than the one they're proposing now. Needless to say, we lost, the tenements were torn down, the hospital lost because they never got to build their facility because the funding dried up. In 1995 and 96, the hospital proposed to build a building on that site, and I was a member of an ad hoc committee that was formed consisting of community members to work with the hospital to come up with a design and to try to see how we could get the building built. It was a very good relationship. We met regularly, we met with the architects, we had meetings during construction, and the result was a building that I think fits into the neighborhood. It's contextual. Go back another 5 or 6 years, and city planning decided to change the zoning in this area to make it contextual zoning. For some reason, the hospital was not included in that zoning district. The zoning district was passed. Community board did nothing to force them to be part of the district, and now we have this mess. Needless to say, I think that the community board should force the hospital to do a compliant zoning study based on the contextual zoning. This would come up with a far smaller facility and something that might fit into the community. And from my point of view, as a member of, or as a
a resident of this neighborhood and Community Board 6, if the building that they come up with is not big enough, I still don't see why they can't go to Litch. I think it's time that everybody work together, that the politicians, the community board put their heads together and come up with a solution that will appease everyone. People in Brooklyn Heights would love to see that facility going again. My office is in that facility. The business are hurting. There's plenty of parking in the building they have there. It would be a lot simpler project to construct because the building exists, so that in a sense makes it sustainable because they won't be using all new materials.
After Rob, the next speaker is Alice Alcala.
My name is Rob Millis. I live on 6th Street nearby. Several people, a city planner, AIA representatives, doctors, engineers have brought up the lack of facts in this proposal. I want to address the manipulation of facts so far. For one thing, it blew me away when I saw this sudden new threat of 2 new towers going up, partly on land that before, last time we were all in this room, they said they couldn't build them. They wouldn't address any possible construction that might lower the height, but use some of that site because it was impossible. It was cost prohibitive. There's no way we could possibly do it. But now they threaten to do exactly that when, if you don't approve their proposal. And then there's the 500,000 proposal versus the 300,000 public statement. Everything publicly has been about 300,000 square feet, which was already pretty obscene considering that 80,000 of it is necessary programmatic use of space. Maybe you add 100,000 of that for further expansion. It's still unnecessarily large. But publicly, it's all 300,000. I'm sorry that you forgot to include the elevators in that, but this is all total news to me. All of the consistent public statements have been manipulative. It's been a PR shell game. I don't think that the hospital is full of money-hungry, greedy corporate titans. I don't think that they're acting in bad faith in terms of serving Brooklyn and serving the city. But they're not coming to the table honestly and openly. Every time there's a meeting, there's a new statement and a new surprise, and some other thing that we didn't expect or didn't see coming. Every time that somebody complained over the last decade about traffic and double parking and litter and everything else in front of the hospital, it was always ignored. In fact, consistently since this summer, we've been told that they have no control over traffic. We can't do anything about it. It's such a shame. Every other location that Methodist runs has the same problems. But, conveniently, when Brad Lander's task force is about to pay a site visit, suddenly you have people out there managing traffic. And all of those problems go away. What the hell is that about? It's infuriating and it's manipulative. And I, for one, am very much in favor of the hospital thriving, of the community getting great services. I wish it was on better public arteries in a better location. Doesn't matter, though. If you're not coming to the table openly and honestly, none of us can trust anything that's being proposed.
Alice Alcala here? No, we'll move on. The next one, first name is Susan, last name begins with a B, 35 6th Street. Sorry, I can't read the last name. Okay, no. Josephine Stewart? No. Fallon? No. Nera Cruz? No. Sandy Person? No. Sophia Schwartz? No. That's it. Ooh. The next part of this meeting, we're going to allow the committee members to ask some questions of the hospital and their representatives. Does someone have a question? Jerry?
It's really very, can someone from the hospital come up or do I have to shout? I
can do that.
Yeah,
I guess I got two questions. One is very simple. Is there any way that your application then can be postponed per what Grant Land said, to continue working with the community on altering the design? Lynn, you mentioned earlier that you're looking at some changes in height. It would be interesting for us to know if those changes are real or not. And the only way to do that is to stop the time clock.
Well, while the hospital is conferring, I just want to explain the time clock issue, which is that we have 60 days from the time that they filed their application to put our recommendation in. The BSA can consider it even if we submit it later. But the question now...
Getting to that.
What was the question?
What if they withdraw it?
Should have.
If they withdraw it, then we start over again.
When did they submit it?
So that's the nature of the question.
When did they submit it?
October 16th. The 60 days will run sometime in mid-December,
October 16th.
after our December 11th board. So we timed this so that we could get it in time. But obviously there's been a lot of questions about additional information.
We can certainly continue working with the community on the design, the facade design. We started that process before we filed the BSA variance filings, and we can continue doing it. And we, as I said in my presentation, we intend to continue doing it.
The question is not about the facade design. The question is about the bulk issues that I believe that
You're talking about the two changes that she suggested?
Well, I'm talking about those issues relating to the R7B section and the R6B section, which we heard tonight are being restudied, so we actually don't really know ultimately what we're voting on in terms of the final design. That's why there's a question about whether the hospital is willing to stop the clock in some way, whether it's by withdrawing the application or making a submission to BSA to request that they hold off and don't, schedule further proceedings until the community board has put in its recommendation.
Yeah, I would suggest we heard very clearly many comments tonight as we've heard in the past. We are working, as we said, for modifications in the R7B and the R6B in response to some of the things we've heard. We certainly could have those available before the next meeting, so before you took your final vote, we would present to you those plans.
Yeah, our process requires a committee vote first, and then a board floor vote.
And if those changes are changes that where it's the sense of the committee that that's what you want, you certainly could make your recommendation conditional on those changes.
Okay. One, the way BSA works, and you know this better than I do, unlike New York, it's very hard to tack conditions when you have the 5 points. Yes, we can do that, but it's normally not done. My other question is really very simple. In your complying plan, you show a building which seems to be built on the current garage. At all of the previous meetings, you told us that you couldn't do that, you didn't want to do that, because it required closing the garage, restructuring the garage because of changes to the building code, and it was exceedingly expensive. So there seems to be a disconnect.
We didn't say that we couldn't do it. We said we didn't want to do it for all of those reasons that you've just mentioned. However, if we are forced to do the complying building, then we will have to absorb the extra cost, take the extra construction time, and be without the garage for a period of 17 months.
And I just want to say, in terms of conditions, I would suggest that the BSA often does impose conditions on variances. In fact, the medical arts building on 7th Avenue, which, as you know was a variance building does have specific conditions on it. So I think certainly if the board has specific concern, they could be included.
I only have one more question. On the item where it says it does not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, what do you consider the neighborhood? Is it, wait folks, you may not want to applaud. Is it 1 block radius, 2 blocks, or is it 6 or 7 blocks? What do you call the neighborhood of Park Slope that's around you that you will not be altering?
I think we see it as the larger neighborhood. I consider myself to live in Park Slope, although I'm quite a number of blocks away from the hospital. I think that we consider 8th Avenue to be part of Park Slope, and there are many large buildings on 8th Avenue. We consider Prospect Park West to be part of Park Slope, and there are quite a number of large apartment buildings there. We also certainly consider the brownstone blocks to be part of Park Slope. We consider the schools to be part of Park Slope. We consider the churches to be part of Park Slope. All of that, I think, is part of the energy and the dynamism of the neighborhood. It is a brownstone Brooklyn neighborhood. It's called a brownstone Brooklyn neighborhood, but it is also very diverse architecturally, and a mix of residential and commercial and institutional uses, and that's part of what makes it a great neighborhood.
In your statement of facts for item C, where you state why you're not altering the essential character of the neighborhood, you state the Center for Community Health would be in keeping with the institutional uses found in the surrounding neighborhood and would be compatible with the residential uses in the area. Define neighborhood and area for me. How far did you look?
I think over the summer we presented a study we had done of the area, which I believe is also in the EAS, as Lynn said. We looked at the area and found that there were both many brownstone blocks and also blocks that had larger buildings. There are many other institutional buildings in the neighborhood. We believe the building is not unlike other institutional buildings in the neighborhood.
The neighborhood, after all, grew up around our hospital, which has been there for 135 years. And I think that having medical facilities is part of the neighborhood and always has been.
Some of the neighbors have asked questions about the sewage system in the area. Have you had any discussions with the city about that, or do you have a response?
Yes, our facilities department has discussed it with them a number of times because we also have some of those issues, and we would be very happy to work with the neighbors to see if we can't get a better response than any of us have been able to get.
But what about how the new facility plays into that?
We have no reason to think that the new facility is going to be involved in making it better or worse.
Gary.
No toilets? No toilets? No sinks?
I had an opportunity to look through the materials, including the traffic study, and I was interested in about the variance that you're not asking for. That the parking is going to be 1,000 parking spaces, give or take, in the completed project before approved. And your peak need is something around 650. And why are you not asking for the variance to drop that down? That, I think, is a perfectly reasonable variance ask.
We actually have a list of employees, 300 long, of employees who have said that they would like to have parking in the garage if it was available to them. And it's our feeling that the neighborhood would love to have those 300 people off your streets. No, these people have signed a waiting list in which they have said that they would like to have parking space in the garage, and they know perfectly well what the cost of that would be.
Quiet.
If I could follow up to that, I think that what's missing then in that traffic study is the induced demand from those additional spaces. what you're saying is you actually would expect the full usage then of the lot.
I believe that's mentioned briefly in the traffic
It's
study.
not in the traffic study.
It's a failure.
But we can certainly amend that and clarify that.
So you're committing to do that?
Yes. Yes.
Good.
Hildegard.
We've had discussions about Washington. So, and I'm excited to know that the people who are going to be working on the project are not going to be running on my lot. So, what would we do to get the really fine employees that come to work at our facility to stop running on my lot? Could be even free parking.
I think, as Lynn has said several times before, one of the things that will be discussed as part of Councilmember Lander's traffic committee will be issues as to what the appropriate cost might be for parking and so on. If you talk to 5 people in Park Slope, they'll have a different point of view about this, and it's something that needs to be discussed and worked out.
I doubt very strongly that anybody in Park Slope would be opposed to getting employees of Methodist Hospital office.
Yeah, I think maybe we weren't clear. I want to be very clear. Our intent here, and we're happy to commit to it, is to use the garage to get current Methodist employees who are parked in the neighborhood off the street.
I'm sorry, this is actually a time for a committee question.
Roy.
One of the documents that was in the packet that was handed to us alleged that as space becomes available in the hospital when the new building is constructed, that additional space will be used to provide single room occupancy.
That could be one of the uses.
Thank you.
Other committee members, the gentleman over there, I guess.
Thank you. I want to follow up on what Gary had asked about parking. How much of the total future condition 1,023 spaces are mandated by zoning?
Almost all of it is mandated by zoning.
Absolutely not.
I'm sorry? The 1,000 spaces is the existing and the proposed garage.
Right, so my question is how many of those 1,023 would be mandated by zoning in the final bill?
Well, we're not doing anything to change the number of spaces that were built under the prior variant. So we're talking about 500 and... Right, so the 540 are required by zoning plus replacing the spots in the doctor's lot on the corner, as well as about 34 spaces that have to be taken out of the existing garage to do the construction.
So let me ask this again then.
Sure.
There are 1,023 parking spaces in the final plan. How many of those are not mandated by zoning?
As I am trying to answer, that is not a question that makes sense because half of those are already required under the prior variance. So I just want to clarify your question.
Okay, that's fine. So let's add the ones that are required in the prior variance.
Okay.
The ones that would have to be
So the only ones that may not be absolutely required are the 113, although 79 of those are replacing the spaces in the corner doctor's lot, and those may have been required parking for the hospital. It's not clear. So the answer is basically all of them are required.
And the prior variance gave the hospital build more or less spaces than were required by zoning?
More than were required.
On the point of the waiting list for parking, if there are in fact 300 employees on a waiting list for parking, why are those 300 employees not reflected in the future conditions of the project as built?
Can you clarify that question?
They are.
Bear with me. Your traffic memorandum says that your peak demand will be 664 parking spaces, and you're going to have parking capacity of 1,023 spaces. But you have 300 employees on a waiting list who are not reflected in that demand of 664 parking spaces.
Yeah, so here we're talking about the crossover between law and the reality of the site. The law is that we have to look at the impact of the project that is being proposed, and those employees have nothing to do with the project that's being proposed. The reality is there are other employees at the hospital campus who we know are having an impact in the neighborhood. We've done a separate traffic study for the traffic task force, which shows that they're there, and we want to accommodate them. So we're looking at what the EAS is analyzing, which is the proposal, versus the reality of that fact that there's an existing building that we're trying to make better.
And I think it's clear that we can amplify the traffic study to clarify the point that you're making, which is a good one, and we will modify it accordingly.
It seems to me that it's disingenuous that these additional 300 people will not park.
That's really the time for the question.
Okay, so then, Danny, my final question is, does the hospital have a traffic demand management program in place? And if not, is there a traffic demand management that will be implemented in conjunction with the expansion of the campus?
What do you mean? I apologize. What do you mean by traffic demand management?
Traffic management programs, like what was done at Park West Center, reducing the amount of parking, incentivizing employees not to drive, cashing out employee parking. So if you're subsidizing parking for employees, you could actually pay them that money so that they don't drive to the hospital and seek other means. In San Francisco, a number of hospitals have traffic management plans. The Seattle Children's Hospital has a very detailed traffic management plan, which I would be glad to share with you and members of the board, in order to disincentivize people from driving and reduce the number of people who are driving to the hospital.
We do I think a number of the things that you're talking about. We have tax deferred Metro cards for our employees. We use a ride sharing program. And we encourage employees to take public transportation in any way we can, and we're always looking for additional ways that we could accomplish that.
I am waiting for the representing Methodist to answer Jerry's question as to whether or not they are willing to delay this process until all the questions that have been raised in tonight's discussion have been satisfied and answered to the benefit of both the hospital and the community.
The first meeting that we had on this project with the community was in June, and both the community board and the Park Slope Civic Council have been incredibly helpful in facilitating those meetings. There were meetings with the residents of 6th Street, there were meetings with 5th Street, there were meetings with the residents of 8th Avenue, and we've had a give and take with a number of people who have come to those meetings and have given us comments, and there have been modifications in the building. At this point, the hospital is ready to move forward. However, there is still room for discussion. As you know, after the community board acts, there will be a public hearing, at least one public hearing at the Board of Standards and Appeals. So this is still a point where dialogue can occur, and the hospital's ears are open and are happy to listen to comments that both the community and the community board have, and they can continue to be incorporated into this project.
Daniel, I have a question that really doesn't go to dialogue, but really goes to information. And that is, I'd like to pick up on Mr. Klein's letter, which I think you've been provided with.
No, we have not.
It's in the...
We did not get it.
Well, he spoke.
Right.
Yeah, we heard it.
So you heard the gist of this point, which is that in all these other projects in Manhattan, there were submissions of very detailed technical analyses going to the need issue. And I'd like to ask you, why didn't we get one?
Okay. So the whole point of a variance, as you know, is it's a constitutional safety valve. You have zoning, but you need to have a way to deal with unique, unusual situations. So each variance application is different. And in each case where we make a variance application, we provide the information that we think is necessary in the case of these hospitals and educational institutions to show the programmatic need and to make the 4 findings that are applicable. We did that here. Certainly, if there's information that the board would like, we are happy to try to provide you with additional information, and if the Board of Standards and Appeals asks us for additional information, we will provide it.
I can't speak for the committee on what, I sit as an ex officio member of the committee here. I can't really speak for them, but just personally, I think It would be very helpful to us to have that kind of analysis.
Well, and I also
Project.
would suggest that in this application, we provided a lot of information about the needs of the hospital and tried to show, because a lot of what we're trying to show here is different than in some of those cases. It has to do with with the importance of having a facility across the street from the existing hospital, and that the facility itself, that the important adjacencies between the operating rooms and the support spaces, and I think we have a lot of material, and I know you read the whole application. We have a lot of material in there about the reasons why we need the large floor plates and why we need the types of spaces that are in this building. And that is the argument here. The arguments for other hospitals are different, and there were different conditions there that were relevant. So I think it's not really fair to talk about other applications. If there's information that you think is lacking here, we're happy to provide it.
The community would like to see
Quiet. The gentleman right there in that podium.
In one of the documents, there's the conclusion that a substantial number of New York Methodist staff, patients, visitors park on street due to a lack of available parking in the off-street facilities. But the study shows that peak demand tops out at 93%. So there are times it seems that there is available off-street parking. Did you do a census of your visitors, employees, etc., to find out why they're parking on the street? It seems to me they might be parking on
Because most of them are parking during the time of peak capacity. They work they work 8 to 5 or they work 8 to 4.
I guess my other question then is, did you do a
Just to
census?
make it simple, just when you look at a parking garage, 93% is full capacity. It's actually more than full capacity. There's no garage you can physically park 100% of the spots 24 hours a day. So if you compare it to other parking garages, 93% would be considered way more than full capacity. The garage is totally full. There are times at night when you can find a spot. There are times of the day you can find a spot for an hour or two. But an employee who has to park for obviously 8 hours or perhaps more, there are no spots. That's the issue.
So I guess my other question then is, of the 300 people on the waiting list, as much as we might like to imagine the horrors of parking in Park Slope due to all 300 of them finding parking, presumably some percentage are taking transit or other options, and the idea of getting a parking permit just might be nice. Have you done a census of those 300 to find out what percentage are currently just taking the bus, the subway, being dropped off, and not needing parking?
No, we haven't.
It just seems to me that if you did that, it might lessen the need. If half of those people are getting to work on their own, it might lessen the need for a free spot.
Right, I understand that, but just understand, part of the problem here is you can't force someone to use a subway. So these are people who are saying...
You can if you don't give them parking.
They want parking. Now, the reality is, what we decided earlier is not to build a bigger parking garage for exactly the issue many of you know, which is the fear of if you build a parking garage, you'll get more traffic.
Yeah.
But the flip of that is there are people who will drive, and if they can't find space in the garage, they'll park on the street. We know some are parking on the street, we don't know how many.
Yeah, I was wondering that question as to what we in the committee would really like to know is the cost factors of locating this new facility across the street versus 4th Avenue and 6th Street. What cost factors would you derive from utilizing the space directly across the street versus moving it from a dense populated area?
Right, so the physical cost is the same. In other words, if you build 300,000 square feet zoning, 500,000 square feet gross on 4th Avenue, or you build it on this site, the physical costs are going to be basically the same. But there are two additional costs. First is you would have to acquire the land. In New York right now, that's going to cost you probably somewhere around $200 a foot. Buildable square foot. So think of how much money that is that would be added to the cost of this building to try to build it on another site, and where would that money come from? Secondly, the biggest cost in healthcare is time. It's the time it takes a doctor to get from one space to another. It's the time it takes a doctor to go from a procedure back to office. The time a patient has to spend in the facility. The key programmatic need here is to place that in one facility across from the hospital where healthcare can be as efficient as possible. That is the key issue here. To place it elsewhere, despite I know what many people have said, is absolutely less efficient from a healthcare point of view. That is why most hospitals in New York have an ambulatory care facility adjacent to the main hospital. Whether it's New York Presbyterian, NYU, Sloan Kettering, or any of them, they have an ambulatory care facility. They may have others beyond that, but the main ambulatory care facility is always adjacent.
I apologize. We need to be out of here at 9:45, so the building is empty at 10 o'clock. So I'm going to recognize Jerry Armour.
I'm going to try again. One of the ways that we can feel a little bit more comfortable for our engineering, both the community and the committee, is if the application is full so we can continue working with you with Veterans Hospital. It's very hard for the committee to vote on something when you're saying that we can continue working and the community can continue working with you on altering the design. So I guess I'm going to try again. Is there any way that you can see a way of pulling the application at BSA or postponing it for a period of time so that you can, as you said, you're willing to work with us, you're willing to work with the community, so that can be continued.
I can't give you an answer to that right now. This is not a decision that I can make on my own. I don't know what the response would be from my colleagues who have been working on this for 6 months and who feel that they have, been working in good faith and have made a lot of changes and are willing to continue making changes. But we do have a time schedule as well, and we want this project to move ahead. And I don't know that they will be willing to slow the process down at this point. I can't give you an answer.
Okay.
No.
On the off chance that your colleagues say no, okay, I'd like to propose the following motion. Under section 7221, the applicant must meet all of the 5 points for a variance to be granted. However, in this case, only 4 points apply. So my motion is as follows: to recommend to BSA that the requested variances be denied. I'm trying to do this so everyone hears it and shout at the same time. So that the requested variance be denied, since the expansion as presented with the building on 8th Avenue would alter the essential character of the neighborhood because of its both, and is not the minimum that you could be requesting. The variance is not the minimum that could be requested. Further, that Methodist Hospital works with Park Slope residents, the elected officials, and the community board to amend the variance request in such a way that it would reduce the bulk in the R6B and R7B portions so that they would be closer to complying with the current zoning limitations, if not fully, but closer. And that's my motion.
Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Glenn. Discussion among committee members? Just land use.
I'll just say I support it, and I think there should be an architectural working group to hammer out some of the finer issues in the future.
Other comments from committee members?
Over there.
Committee members.
Jerry, is this either or? Is your first request that they withdraw the application?
Yes.
But
I have to be prepared that they don't, so that the community board has some response if they say no.
That's what we withdraw. So our first request is in writing to them to withdraw the application?
That's what, yes.
And then in the wings
No. The vote will be taken and withdrawn if they agree to propose action.
The vote will be taken. It will be a motion of this committee. If they withdraw the application, it will move this vote.
Who's voting on the motion?
Another question. Is the Transportation Committee going to have an opportunity to have a vote, presumably not this evening because we're out of time, but before the community board meets?
Does transportation have a
No, we do not. But there was some talk earlier this evening about a December 5th
Point
date.
of order, even though transportation has a lot to say, based on the 4 points or 5 points, depending on how you look at it, transportation, of which I'm a member also, is less advisory than the land.
But as a matter of process, you've got transportation members here, and you've got transportation expertise in the room that we will have.